From Kern Government Television, welcome to this week's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting, originating from the County Administrative Center located at 1115 Truxtun Avenue, Bakersfield, California. Kern County's vision is to create and maintain a customer-centered county government designed to garner the confidence, support, and trust of the people we serve. Today's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting will convene momentarily.
Okay, board to reconvene. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Supervisor Peters.
Here.
Supervisor Scrivener.
Here.
Supervisor Maggard.
Here.
Supervisor Couch. Supervisor Perez.
Okay, good morning and welcome to the Monday, March 8th, 2021, 9 a.m. special meeting of the Board of Supervisors. We'll begin today with a flag salute led by Supervisor David Couch. Following the Pledge of Allegiance, please remain standing for a moment of prayer, silence, or meditation, whichever you prefer. I'd like to start by explaining how today's hearing will be conducted. The County of Kern has provided notice that as a result of the declared federal, state, and local emergencies due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and in light of the governor's orders, this Board of Supervisors meeting is not physically open to the public. Testimony and general public comment have been accepted via U.S. mail, email, and voicemail to the clerk of the board prior to today's meeting. Live comments via teleconference and recorded voice messages will be heard during the meeting. We will open the public hearing process after the planning director's presentation of item number 1. We will first hear from the applicant and 2 parties who have provided extensive comments on the project. These 3 parties will each have an 8-minute presentation time to comment. We will then turn to those who have called in by phone, each of whom will have 2 minutes to provide their comments. When your name has been identified, please unmute by pressing *6 on your phone. You can then immediately begin talking by introducing yourself. While you will not hear anything, we will be able to hear you. You will have 2 minutes to speak, but if you exceed the allotted time, then your call will be ended at 2 minutes and 10 seconds. After hearing from those who have called in, we will hear from those who have provided their comments via voicemail. After hearing from everyone registered to speak and the voicemails submitted, we will close the public hearing. We are also providing the opportunity to listen to a Spanish language translation of this entire meeting by calling 1-831-296-3421 and using conference ID 884-725-085#. Again, the phone number is 831-296-3421 and the conference ID is 884-725-085#. This is a translation only. It is recommended that those calling this number for Spanish language translation view the meeting on your cable television channel with the sound off. Live comment and voicemail comments will be presented in Spanish. Live comment and voicemail comments presented in Spanish will be translated. I would ask our interpreter to come forward, and that is Elizabeth Candela, and provide translation in Spanish of the meeting procedures that I just read.
Quiero empezar al explicar cómo se va a llevar a cabo esta reunión. El condado de Kern ha proveído aviso como el resultado de las declaraciones federales, estatales y locales de esta emergencia debido a la pandemia COVID-19, considerando la orden del gobierno. La reunión de la Junta de Supervisores físicamente no está abierto al público. Declaraciones y comentarios del público general han sido aceptados vía correspondencia, correo electrónico y correo de voz a la actuaria de la Junta anteriormente de la reunión del día de hoy. Comentarios en vivo vía teleconferencia y mensajes de voz grabados serán escuchados durante la Junta. Convocaremos el proceso de esta reunión pública después de la presentación del artículo número 1 de la directora de planificación. Primero, escucharemos del solicitante y las dos partes que han proveído comentarios extensivos en dicho proyecto. Las terceras partes, cada uno tendrán 8 minutos de presentación y en el momento de comentar. En turno, los que han llamado por teléfono, cada uno tendrá 2 minutos a proveer sus comentarios. Cuando se identifique su nombre, por favor de quitar su teléfono en silencio y oprimir estrella 6. Puede inmediatamente hablar al presentarse. Aún no podrán escuchar nada. Nosotros podemos escucharlo. Tendrá 2 minutos para hablar y si excede el tiempo asignado, su llamada terminará a los 2 minutos y 10 segundos. Escucharán de los que han proveído sus comentarios por correo de voz posteriormente al escuchar a los que han llamado. Cerraremos la reunión pública posteriormente después de escuchar a todos los que se han registrado para hablar y los correos de voz presentados. También estamos proveyendo la oportunidad de escuchar en el idioma español los servicios de interpretación en el idioma español durante esta junta. Al llamar 1-831-296-3421 y usar el número de identificación de conferencia 884-725-085, el signo de libra. Únicamente es para la interpretación. Se recomienda los que están llamando al número para la interpretación del idioma español puedan ver la junta en su canal de televisión de cable con el sonido apagado. Los comentarios en vivo y los comentarios de correo de voz presentados en español serán interpretados.
Thank you, Ms. Candela. And also, just so viewers are aware, we'll have the number to call in for the Spanish translation on the bottom of the screen momentarily. We will now consider item number 1 under Planning and Natural Resources Department. I don't have my Okay, that is the request from Kern County Planning and Natural Resources Department, Western States Petroleum Association, California Independent Petroleum Association, proposed text amendments to consider various chapters of Title 19 Kern County zoning ordinance to reconsider implementation of a land use approval process for oil and gas exploration, extraction, operations, and production activities. Thank you, Director Oviatt. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. I am Lorelei Oviatt, the Director of Kern County Planning and Natural Resources. Good morning, Chairman Peters, members of the board. I'm here today with Cindy Hoover, Team Planner, and Craig Murphy, Assistant Director. This matter is, if we could have the map slide. This matter is the consideration of revisions to the zoning ordinance to reestablish local permitting for oil and gas activities with environmental protections for the health and safety of our communities. Consideration of the final supplemental recirculated environmental impact report, which is shortened in my presentation to SREIR, is part of this action. Until 2015, there was no permit required for oil and gas or pipeline activities in the unincorporated county. The zoning ordinance contained a few setbacks and requirements, but all the regulation was through the state of California agencies. A permit from what is now called California Geologic Energy Management Division, CalGEM for short, and the previous DOGGR did all the environmental review and issued the permit. That review included no air mitigation and few other mitigations for land use impacts. The focus of the permitting was their authority, which is the regulation of the drilling and underground elements as well as oil and gas-related infrastructure. The scope of that state oversight addressed 100 established oil fields in unincorporated Kern County, with over 596,000 acres of Kern County land, out of the 2.3 million acres in the valley portion of Kern County, which you see on this map. That previous ordinance is now the current standard once again for the majority of oil and gas activities. While oil and gas activities in residentially zoned areas only require a conditional use permit with public hearings and would still require a CUP under the ordinance that is being considered today, all of the other permitting would not require a local Kern County permit and would require no mitigation that your board could impose. In 2015, after a 3-year process of stakeholder discussion and public process, revisions to the zoning ordinance and a project-level environmental impact report were considered by the Planning Commission and approved by your board. It established a local permit system for all oil and gas and pipeline activities on unincorporated land and contained extensive new protective measures for health and safety of communities, residents, agricultural surface owners, while providing for a clear and certain process for permitting. The ordinance in 2015 final EIR was sued by a number of parties. A full description of the permitting from 2015 to March 26, 2020 in the lawsuits are provided in the staff report and in the SREIR. The ordinance itself was sued but was found to be valid. Nothing about it was found by the court to be in violation of state planning law. The 2015 final environmental impact report was, however, found to be deficient on 5 topics. While the court ordered the county to stop permitting by March 26, 2020, which we did, and rescind the ordinance, which your board did, only 5 parts of the EIR were ordered to be reevaluated if the ordinance was to be considered again. The rest of the environmental impact report is considered in full compliance with all the requirements of law by the state appeals court. That is the project that is before you today. The same revisions to the zoning ordinance that were successfully implemented from 2015 to March 2020 have been reviewed by staff. We've included some focus changes. We have updated the names of county departments and state agencies that have changed since 2015 and some implementation details. We are recommending a reduction in the number of new wells permitted in each calendar year. We have clarified the process for monitoring split estate 120-day process, which provides for agricultural owners of land who do not own their minerals. And we have adjusted the tier maps for technical geographic information system errors that we identified since the 2015 adoption. A supplemental recirculated environmental impact report that addresses 5 topic areas directed by the court. These 5 topic areas are, these 5 topics are 1, mitigation of water supply impacts and discussion of the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. 2, impacts from PM 2.5 emissions, including on health. 3, mitigation of conversion of agricultural land. And 4, noise impacts for both construction and operations. And 5, recirculation of the multi-well health risk assessment for public review and comment. Those are the 5 topics that are included in the supplemental recirculated EIR that has been before your board for consideration for compliance for this ordinance. The ordinance proposed would apply to all unincorporated lands in the valley portion of the county, including the over 140,000 acres of private land that has Federal Bureau of Land Management mineral resources leases. It would not apply to any incorporated city. The staff report, pages 10 through 33, presents the permitting process, standards, implementation, and enforcement measures. So the basic structure is 2 different permits, an oil and gas conformity review and a minor activity review. We've provided you in the staff report flow charts of the process for your reference. All new wells or specifically identified work on existing wells needs a permit and needs to comply with all these requirements. There is no waiver from the permit, and no permit can be issued by the state, and no activities can occur on the site until the Kern County permit is issued. Then they go to the state and they get that permit. They comply with the conditions, and then they can move in and start activities on the site. Both of these Kern County permits are ministerial, which means they do not require a public hearing or any subjective decisions on the part of the oil and gas permit technicians. The permit application must comply with all the standards and applicable mitigations from the list of 87 measures on the Mitigation Measure Monitoring Program. And if they comply after confirmation by the county staff, a permit is issued within 7 business day review. If incomplete, is returned for further compliance. After approval and payment of all required mitigation charges, an approved permit is issued. So our permit is 7 days, CalGEM's permit is 10 days. So the applicant then applies to the state CalGEM for a required notice of intent to drill. All the downhole requirements and other state regulations on oil and gas activities are the jurisdiction of CalGEM to review and enforce. However, we've included an analysis of all of those activities in the EIR in 2015 and in this supplemental recirculated EIR. So as a responsible agency, they can utilize the certified SR-EIR 2020-2021 for compliance with CEQA. The full process, analysis, and recommendations on the SR-EIR are detailed in your staff report on pages 33 to 58. You have received all public documents released throughout the process, including the notice of preparation, both circulations of the draft SR-EIR, one in August 2020 and one in October 2020, and the Chapter 7, Volume 1A response to comments. The final SR-EIR recommended for your consideration is one document that contains the complete 2015 final EIR, the complete 2018 final supplemental EIR that was provided for grazing, and the supplemental analysis to address the 5 topic area deficiencies and clarifications to the mitigation measures. All of these documents were circulated twice for public comment, and all of these documents are now one document for consideration called the final SR-EIR 2020-2021. When printed out, it's contained in the 72 binders that are in the chamber today in front of your dais. The major changes to the ordinance are in the mandatory setbacks from sensitive receptors, the reduction in the annual cap in maximum number of new wells that could be drilled, new mitigation for impacts to designated farmland, noise, and water, and clarifications to other mitigation measures. So let's walk through those changes. The mandatory setbacks means the very closest a new well could ever be to a sensitive receptor. And sensitive receptors are single-family homes, apartments, a church, an institution, a hospital, and a place of public assembly, which we have defined as a legally permitted place where 100 or more people gather together in a building for the purpose of amusement, entertainment, or retail sales. So for example, a shopping center that has a Target is a place of public assembly. A small mini mart that only has capacity for 25 people is not a place of public assembly. But if it's in a shopping center that has other such uses, then there would be a required setback. The setback would then be 210 feet from the legal parcel property line of any of those types of uses, not from the actual building itself. So if the building is on a bigger parcel, it's from the property line. In addition, 300 feet from the legal parcel line of any property that contains a permitted public or private school has actually been the setback since 1986 in this county and is in the ordinance now. Staff is recommending that rather than reduce that setback, since the state of California has, over the years, used that setback when evaluating where schools should be, we are recommending that you leave it at 300 feet. Those are mandatory setbacks. The only way that you could be closer is by doing a conditional use permit. So any of these measures that an oil company wanted an exception to would have to submit an application, go through a conditional use permit process, provide us supplemental environmental information for the CEQA compliance, go to a planning commission, and it could be appealed to your board. To date, on the permits that we have done over 5 years, we have no one who has actually asked for a waiver of any of these requirements, but that certainly is available if for some reason a mineral owner felt that these were unreasonable. They would have to make the case. That is a mandatory setback. A mitigation trigger is a second type of setback. These are distances that, if not met, require other physical actions to address the impact. So I'd like to walk through the health risk assessment chart. Next slide. So these are minimum mitigation trigger distances. So the health risk assessment, established and supports with science and extensive work in the SREIR, as part of the 210 feet. But if you are in the western sub-area and you are drilling at 10,000 feet, then the distance actually needs to be increased to 367 feet. So that's what we call a mitigation trigger. When you go through the process, if your well is not greater than 367 feet away from a sensitive receptor, and there are detailed requirements that you give us a site vicinity map of 4,000 feet, show us everything within 4,000 feet, then you have to set back, or you have to do a focused health risk assessment with the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District having the final say on that setback for the health risk assessment. As you can see, however, the majority of wells are at 5,000 feet or lower, and so the 210 feet actually covers the 116 feet health risk assessment. So a way to think of it is that for 5,000-foot wells, that trigger is already inside the 210 feet mandatory setback. One of the most significant changes is on noise. So if we could show the noise chart. So the Kern County General Plan establishes a 65 decibel limit for noise. What this means is that in your backyard of a single-family home, the loudest that some other project outside of your backyard could generate noise is 65. That is our standard. When we did the 2015 EIR, we used 65. And the court said that there was nothing wrong with the 65, except that it did not address ambient. What if the ambient is lower than 65? So we have now gone back and created an ambient level mitigation. And we have established as the threshold 5 decibels over over the ambient. The ambient, based on our SREIR comprehensive studies around oil fields and near oil fields, is someplace around 48 or 49. Could be louder, rarely softer. Most of these oil fields are near major highways. They're large oil fields and they already have a noise. But if you have a house, a church, an institution that is within 4,000 feet, that's the trigger, you then have to do an acoustic noise study. And that report is submitted if you're within the trigger distance. So if you look on the chart that I've put up, so for example, the trigger distance at 5,000 feet for well advancement is 3,900 feet. So this is for construction noise. Construction noise. Lots of drills, clanging, dropping of things. It can be very noisy. So you hire an acoustical noise expert, the oil company. They do a report which they submit to the oil technician. In the report, they have to have gone out, taken a reading of what the ambient is now at the sensitive receptor property line, not at the building, but at the property line, which gives you even a more conservative measurement, and then also at the site itself. And then you have to propose during construction that you are not going to exceed whatever that number is at that sensitive receptor more than 5 decibels. And there is a list in the mitigation measures of various things you can do. There are very large inflatable construction acoustic walls that you can put around your drill rig. There are orientations of the drill rigs that you can do so that the fins that cause a lot of the noise are not pointed at the sensitive receptor. You can go and talk to the homeowner, the church, or whoever this is and ask them. You can compensate them to not be there during certain times, or not conduct their business. That is completely voluntary. We would require that we had written agreement of that. You can change the kind of equipment you use, but it all has to be documented in this acoustical noise, and it all has to be implemented for the entire construction operations. Immediately after starting construction, you have to again monitor and submit a report that shows us that you're achieving the 5 over, no more than 5 over ambient. And then every 2 weeks during this construction, you have to show that you're complying with that number. For operations, it's slightly different. For operations, the mitigation measure, we did an analysis that shows that the number is actually using a diesel engine 650 feet from a sensitive receptor. If you're using electric, then the 210 will apply. So once again, you give us a site plan that shows everything within 4,000 feet. We identify the sensitive receptors that are within 4,000 feet. And then because you're doing that for operations anyway, for construction anyway, for operations, we look to see, are you within 650 feet and using a diesel engine to power your pump jack? Then you will have to give us an acoustical report and put in a block wall, or you can change your operation to electric. So we have addressed both of the issues that the court raised with this extensive new mitigations. We absolutely have increased the number of projects that will be subject to this mitigation, but we have provided in the SREIR extensive science-based evidence that this mitigation is sufficient. So page 40 through 43 provides all the details of the noise mitigation that I just walked through. Next slide. Another major change is the reduction in the annual cap on permits. So the 2015 zoning ordinance that was in place for 5 years had an annual permit cap of 3,647 new wells. That was a foreseeable forecast in 2015 for the industry. So that over 20 years, which is the analysis that was done in the CIR, all these sections, traffic, biology, all use a 20-year time frame from 2015, not 20 years from 2021, 20 years from the original 2015. So that foreseeable forecast in 2015 would be a potential total of 72,940 wells until 2035. We have now reviewed that against the 5 years of permitting we did, which averaged about 1,900 permits a year. And since the assessments in the SREIR uses a reasonably foreseeable average of 2,687 new wells per year, staff has changed the recommended ordinance. The ordinance is before your board today, is proposing a cap of 2,687 new wells per year. Now, this is a not to exceed in the calendar year in which the permit is first issued, and it begins at 0 permits in January of each year. That means if only 2,000 new wells are issued in year 2022, the remaining 697 cap amount is lost. It cannot be added to the next year. So it just restarts every year. And so that number now exactly matches the average number of wells that determine the description of ground disturbance and all of the impacts in the SREIR. And this would still provide for oil and gas activities that have historically occurred. And so I've provided you an actual breakdown of the real numbers. So in year 1 to about 6, we actually, it's not really 6 because for 1 year we have not permitted at all. We did 5,861 new wells for those 6 years. So the projection could be, with this cap, from year 7 to 10, 10,788 new wells. Year 11 to 15, 13,485 new wells. Year 16 to 20, which is 2035, 13,485 new wells. So that's a total from 2015 to 2035 of 43,619 new wells, not the 72,000 that we had projected in the 2015. As a reminder, on many projects that have been brought before your board, such as solar, wind, housing, what we project is the worst case scenario on many issues in the EIR. And your board has the discretion to reduce the size of a project. In this case, this cap is well within the historical permitting that oil and gas does, and actually have not come close to that cap in those previous 5 years. Thank you. We're done with the slides, Ms. Krause. So mitigation for ag farmland conversion or water are also changes to the project. Page 39 to 40 provides further details on these changes. So the final SREIR projected that based on these disturbance factors that we just talked about, this number of wells and how much each well disturbs, 298 total acres of farmland per year would potentially be taken out of production for well siting and operation. 298 total acres of farmland. And we do have a specific definition of farmland, which I'll go over in a minute. The actual amount over the 4 years of permitting, was an average of 12 acres per year. So during the 5 years of permitting, we did 12 acres per year of farmland conversion. So the original mitigation for mandatory agricultural easements for those 12 acres every year, where you would go and buy an ag easement for 12 acres in another location to mitigate the land impacts, were found invalid by the court and has been replaced by mitigation measure 4.2-1. Staff truly believes that agricultural easements are an important tool for voluntary agreements and tax purposes for farmers and conservation goals. But if your board imposes it, it would be a mandatory requirement under CEQA. And as it does not mitigate for the loss of land, since it's not creating replacement farmland, but simply conserving land that's already being farmed in a different location, it cannot be imposed as legally mandated mitigation. The creation of replacement farmland is also constrained by the water resource limitations due to the ongoing drought conditions in the groundwater sustainability plans. Without a guaranteed long-term water supply, any land put back into farming could not qualify for mitigation purposes. And so all feasible mitigation was reviewed, all suggestions for mitigation was reviewed and discussed in Chapter 4.2, Ag Resources, and responses to comments include our evaluation of that. So what is the mitigation now? So the definition of farmland is it must be designated prime farmland of statewide importance or unique farmland under the mapping of the state. It's been actively farmed 5 years or more out of the last 10, and it has a water allocation sufficient for farming from any source. So mitigation measure 4.2-1 has that definition and now limits how much ground you can disturb. So there are 3 sub-areas, western, central, and eastern. No individual well in the western area can disturb more than 2 acres of that farmland. That includes everything: parking, equipment storage, operational equipment, temporary construction laydown, 2 acres. In the central, it's 3 acres, and in the eastern, it's 1.2 acres. So this will, by its very nature, limit the amount of disturbance, whereas the previous mitigation did not limit disturbance. It only limited it based on how much the oil company was willing to pay for the ag easement. So they could have disturbed 5 acres of land for an individual well. They just had to pay for it. In this case, they cannot disturb it under any circumstances for each individual well. Mandatory clustering of wells was carefully evaluated. However, such a requirement would limit the flexibility of surface owners and mineral owners to select the best site on the agricultural operations and determine that in negotiations with the mineral owner. It could also prevent and interfere with the legal right of the mineral owner to access their minerals, as multiple ownerships of leases on the very same piece of property can occur. Your board has actually experienced this situation with a variety of tentative tract maps that have come on appeal before your board, where there are two primary mineral owners, and then there is another mineral owner who may not be ready to drill, but comes in and objects to the amount of space that's being provided for a drilling island. This would be the equivalent of establishing a drilling island. Instead, the strict limit on the area each well can disturb provides for containment of this activity and limits. It also requires that all legacy equipment on the farmland's legal parcel where the new well is being permitted, if controlled by the applicant, has to be removed. So when we say controlled, we've also written legal language into the mitigation measure that prevents them from transferring it to another entity but still having legal liability for it. So they can't transfer the legacy equipment to someone else and get out from under this requirement. And this requirement is not a comparable replacement. If there's a 10-acre parcel and you're going to do a 1.2-acre individual well, and you have legacy equipment on the 10-acre parcel that takes up 3 acres, you have to take all 3 acres of the legacy equipment off. And this removal contributes to not adding to farmland conversion on these parcels. Proposals were provided asking us to also ask for legacy equipment not on that parcel to be removed. We carefully considered this in 2015 extensively. We have considered it again. We can find no way legally to require an oil operator to remove equipment from someone else's property. So if they don't own equipment on farmland someplace else, they would be unable to implement this mitigation measure. There are limits to the exactions, even in the zoning ordinance, that your board can require. We have also added a clear statement that in this mitigation that siting and construction of new disposal ponds are now prohibited on such designated farmland. What this means is even if they go to the water board and they ask for a new disposal pond, our zoning ordinance would forbid it. And the water board could not overrule us on farmland. In that case, once again, if they disagreed with that, they could process a conditional use permit, which would go through a public hearing and come before your board asking that that particular provision be waived. There are a variety of other mitigation measures for protection of ag land, from surface water runoff, stormwater control, and spill prevention. Water was also one of the topics, and the court was interested in how does the Sustainable Groundwater Act implementation affect our 2015 determinations of water. So a comprehensive report, which is an attachment to the SREIR, of all of the Sustainable Groundwater Act plans was compiled and included. It was reviewed by all of the GSAs in the valley who had no comments. It is not a conclusion document. Instead, it is a comprehensive, detailed explanation of what all those plans mean and how they knit together to manage the water in the 2.3 million acre project. Oil and gas is projected to use up to 12,936 acre feet of groundwater over the total 20-year projection from 2015 to 2035. Any use of water in an overdrafted basin is considered significant. They have the right to use the groundwater if they've bought that groundwater or they actually have their own wells, and we were not able to identify any legal way that your board could forbid a industry from using groundwater. We are, however, concerned and about keeping track of what those water numbers are and helping the groundwater sustainability agencies track that. So mitigation measure 4.17-3 requires that all use of groundwater be quantified at the time of the permit application. So they have to tell us, I'm using groundwater. This is M&I water. This is different from processed water, which is the oil field water that you bring up, which is not under the jurisdiction of the groundwater sustainability plans and is not considered groundwater. So processed water, water that comes up with the oil, is not groundwater. We're talking about groundwater that could potentially be drinkable or usable or treated and somehow used. So at the time they ask for their permit, they tell us how much water they're going to use, and they give us written confirmation that it comes from a metered water well. So if the water well they're using is not metered, they will be required to pay to meter it, or we won't allow them to use it on this permit. And we believe that will support a lot of the goals of the GSAs. We will put a report annually of the amounts reported, posted on the department website, as well as provided to all the SGMA agencies. Water quality was not one of the topics that had to be re-examined. However, in acknowledgement that any drop of water that's drinkable that we use could take away from being used by someone else in the basin, we are proposing a mitigation measure 4.17-5. This is a disadvantaged community drinking water grant fund implemented by Kern County Public Health. Each well will pay $250, and each minor activity review will pay $50. Grants are available for projects in disadvantaged communities in the valley portion. They cannot be used for planning, but they can be used for design, permitting, construction of water systems. They could be used within incorporated city limits. It's expected that this would generate about $460,000 a year. Many of the smaller water districts and others and people such as self-help are in line for large grants through these state programs, and they need a small matching amount. We could use this as a matching amount to help some of these projects move forward. The health risk assessment and discussion of PM10 and PM2.5 is comprehensively discussed in the SREIR. The single and multi-well health risk assessment from 2015 was further reviewed, circulated, and found valid. It was circulated twice for comment. All the details can be found in Chapter 7, Volume 1A, Global Response 6, Health Risk Assessments. These assessments support the 210-foot mandatory setback. The public comments on the zoning ordinance changes, as well as the SREIR, is fully detailed in pages 44 through 55 of the staff report. Additional public comments in support and opposition have been provided you in an addendum, which has also been provided to you and posted online at kernplanning.com. So once again, this is an additional staff report that we call an addendum. It is posted on the front of our Kern County website, kernplanning.com. This addendum includes over 2,500 pages of comments and reference materials submitted by Earth Justice, Gardner Farms attorney Shoot Mahali at 5 o'clock on Friday, March 5th. A coalition of environmental justice groups submitted additional opposition names and requested the project be delayed as insufficient time has been provided for providing comments. Staff notes this project has been in process for reconsideration of the ordinance for over 1 year. It included 3 briefing workshops, 2 circulations of the draft EIR, and 2 public hearings. We have carefully reviewed all the materials submitted on Friday and provided your board with detailed written responses in the addendum that you have received and that has been posted on our website. None of the information presented information that was not discussed and analyzed in the final SREIR, with the exception of the comments on the statement of overriding consideration, which is in your Exhibit C. The comments request denial of the ordinance and take exception to the statement of overriding considerations. Generally, the comments, all of the comments that we have received, which you have received in the staff report as well as in this addendum, for local permitting that are in opposition to oil and gas activities focus on the necessities to stop fossil fuel activities for climate change initiatives and health impacts from oil activities, including the proximity of oil and gas wells to communities, homes, and schools. They request we deny the ordinance as not sufficiently protective of our communities and replace our economic base with renewable energy and other industries. Another part of the comments request we not focus on local permitting, but instead on phasing out fossil fuel industry and work to transition our oil field workers to renewable energy jobs. The support letters focus on the demand side of fossil fuels and that regulated, environmentally responsible oil and gas activities provide local jobs, property tax revenue, and is a better solution than the import of foreign oil for the demand here in California. They request you approve the ordinance as supportive of economic benefits from oil and gas and environmental protections for communities. The ordinance language presented for consideration is completely shown in Exhibit A of your staff report and dated March 8th, 2021. The mitigation measure and monitoring program is completely shown in Exhibit D of your staff report. The final supplemental SREIR consists of 8 volumes, 72 binders when printed. We've provided you revised draft findings for the CEQA findings of fact in Exhibit B and a proposed statement of overriding consideration in Exhibit C. This completes my presentation of the overview of the project and process, and after public testimony, I will review the Planning Commission and staff recommendation and be available for questions. I'd like to ask that John Lifquist, the county assessor, now update your board on the projections for oil and gas revenues to supplement the record.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Peters, members of the board, John Lifquist, Kern County Assessor Recorder. So every year, the assessor's office makes a projection of the coming assessment roll, just a rudimentary estimate of what values are going to be. And what we do on the oil and gas properties is we take the top 40 properties, we plug in our estimate or the value that we're going to be using to value oil for the year, and we plug those numbers into last year's values. So basically, we're not making any assumptions for changes in expenses, changes in reserve. We're just plugging those numbers into last year's numbers. This year, the top 40 properties, the assessment yielded a decline of 35% for those properties from 2020 to 2021. And we gave the CAO an estimate of between a 30 to 40% decline.
Sorry, is there? Okay, is that all to the report?
That's,
Okay.
I believe so.
Appreciate
And if there are any questions, I'd be willing to answer.
Are there any other questions from the board?
Thank you. Through the chair, thank you, Chairman. John, good to see you. Good morning. Thank you for the bad news. We really appreciate it. What does it mean in a practical sense for the public when you come down here and say, I estimated a reduction of 30 to 40%. Now we see what looks like 35%. You know, what is that in English for the viewer, for the observer? What does that mean in very practical terms for this body? Why is it relevant? What concerns should we have?
Well, the assessment roll last year was a little over 100 million. If we're looking at a 30% decline in oil and gas, we're looking at 102 billion. We're looking at a $3 billion decline in oil and gas. Obviously, a 40% decline would be substantially more. So that's of the total assessment roll, that's a large decline in assessment value, large decline in tax revenue.
So what does that mean to a voter or resident in Kern County? That number is almost unfathomable. So that means you give us a smaller check. What does it mean, John?
Well, we don't send out the tax bills, but those values go to the tax collector. Taxes are collected on those. Less revenue means less revenue to all county services, sheriff, GA, libraries, every service.
Essentially a 35% cut in all of those departments, in
No,
theory.
35% is the reduction in oil and gas assessment. Oil and gas assessments last year accounted for 16% of the assessment roll.
Okay.
So it's a 35% reduction in that
of the
16%.
Got it. And you anticipate that dollar amount to be roughly?
I'm not going to translate that into dollars. I'm just telling you that a 3% decline in revenue to the county means a 3% decline in revenue to the sheriff, DA,
Right.
all the departments.
35%.
Libraries, correct.
Okay, thank you. That's all for now.
Thank you, Supervisor Perez. Are there any other questions? Ms. Oviatt?
Thank you. Chairman Peters, my staff has noted to me that I keep reducing the annual cap by 10 permits. So I just wanted to clarify something, if you're,
Okay, great, thank you.
okay, I just want to clarify that the number is 2,697 annual permits that the SREIR analyzed and that I am recommending in the ordinance. Thank you.
Perfect, thanks. Okay, I don't see any other questions, so thank you, Mr. Lifquist.
Thank you.
Okay, we will now open the public hearing, and Madam Clerk, would you call the first speaker, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. We're going to start with the 3 8-minute slots, and the applicant is going to go first. We have 2 speakers, Kathy Reheis-Boyd and Rock Zierman. And Ms. Boyd, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6, you can start your presentation, and the clock is set for 8 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, good morning, we can hear you.
Great. Good morning. My name is Kathy Reed. Getting a little bit of an echo on this end.
Do you have any other things on TV or something that you're listening to it on? Maybe you can mute those.
I actually don't. Interesting.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm not sure what's causing that, but we can hear you loud and clear on our end.
Okay. So, good morning. My name is Kathy Reheis-Boyd, and I'm President and CEO of the Western States Petroleum Association. We're representing companies that explore for, produce, refine, transport, and market petroleum and petroleum products, natural gas, and other energy supplies in California and for other Western states. WISPA, along with the California Independent Petroleum Association, were original applicants for zoning ordinance revisions and accompanying EIR that the board adopted in November of 2015. Together, the applicant associations represent over 30 companies. The oil and gas ordinance in 2015 EIR created a comprehensive, streamlined permitting system for oil and gas activities in Kern County, imposing new standards and conditions for oil and gas exploration, development, and production. The EIR introduced many new restrictive and costly requirements and mitigation measures which significantly affect industry operations. And nevertheless, WISPA strongly supported them and continues to support them. These measures provide certainty and efficiency for the county's streamlined permitting process. In our view, the oil and gas permitting program has been highly successful, helping to further responsible oil and gas development while at the same time safeguarding the county's environmental resources. Among other things, the program generated over $136 million in mitigation fees over the 4.25 years that it was in effect. And I want to say we greatly appreciate the work of county staff in effective implementation of the program. Before you today is a supplemental recirculated EIR to supplement the 2015 EIR prepared by county staff to comply with the Court of Appeals decision requiring additional environmental analysis of specific areas. And we want to thank the staff again for their tremendous hard work to prepare the SREIR. But most importantly, the ordinance will require compliance with 87 mitigation measures as set forth in the final SREIR. WISPA supports and agrees with the revised and added standards and mitigation measures in the SREIR to address the Court of Appeals decision and strengthen the ordinance implementation. Now, some commenters urged the county to reject the SREIR and ordinance, arguing that the county should transition from fossil fuel to renewable energy production to address the problem of global climate change. Both traditional and renewable energy have a place in responding to climate change. Switching from coal-fired to gas-fired power plants has been a major contributor to global carbon emission reductions to date. Kern County is a leading oil and gas producing county, not only in the state of California, but in the nation. And at the same time, the county is a leader in renewable energy and has permitted numerous solar and wind projects. And we are involved in all of these. The ordinance and SREIR do not discourage further renewable energy development within the county. California's energy industry leads in innovation and environmental stewardship. We comply with some of the strictest environmental regulations in the world, and we strive to operate in harmony with our neighbors and communities. California-based oil and gas production, in particular here in Kern County, provides an essential supply of energy that keeps our economy and citizens moving forward. In 2019, this industry accounted for roughly $197 million of Kern County's property tax valuations and over 16,000 jobs at average wages 60% above the county average. So we respectfully ask the Board of Supervisors to certify the SREIR and readopt the ordinance. Again, we appreciate the county's support for reinstating the oil and gas permitting program, and we look very forward to its continued success with economic and environmental benefits for the county. Thank you so much for the opportunity to comment today.
Thank you. Okay, Madam Speaker, or excuse me, Madam Clerk, our next speaker, please.
Is Mr. Rock Zierman going to finish the presentation?
Yeah, good morning, members of the board. My name is Rock Zierman, and I appreciate the opportunity to deliver remarks on behalf of the California Independent Petroleum Association. As you heard from my WISPA colleague, SIPA is a co-applicant for the CIR. We represent about 350 oil and natural gas producers, service and supply companies, and royalty owners statewide. The vast majority of our members operate here in Kern County. We really appreciate the work that county staff has done under the leadership of Planning Director Lorelei Oviatt over the last several years for this process. It's been a very heavy lift, but it's a major step forward for environmental protection, for energy security, and economic prosperity in Kern County. First, it assures the public that energy is produced here locally under the toughest environmental protections on the planet. As we've talked about, our companies have paid more than $136 million in fees under this permitting program for clean air programs and other mitigation measures. This is money that has benefited the entire community, allowing the county to buy firefighting equipment, retrofit school buses, create a world crime task force, and assist farmers in purchasing cleaner equipment. It's also provided funding for water projects to help citizens in disadvantaged communities. Our state demands 1.8 million barrels of oil every day, and if we go away tomorrow, the demand for our product will not. And the only viable way to replace locally produced oil is tankering it in from overseas, from foreign countries. And unlike SIPA, these foreign regimes don't follow California's strictest on the planet regulations, and they certainly don't care about human rights like we do. As a result, reducing in-state production hurts California's environmental leadership. One study found that pollution from idle foreign tankers off our coast create the same emissions as 68,000 cars on the road each day. This supplemental EIR builds on the dozens of mitigation measures in the initial version. Compliance will impact the cost of operations, but it's something our members are willing to do because we care about the communities we live and work in. This ordinance cements Kern County's leadership as a welcoming place for new and traditional energy generation to work side by side. Our members embrace an all of the above energy strategy and have renewable projects working side by side with their operations. No other industry is better poised with research and development of innovative methods that will significantly lower emissions and potentially permanently remove carbon from our atmosphere. This permitting program also gives certainty to businesses who want to generate energy and create quality careers. No other industry provides a path to the middle class like ours does. Workers in our industry earn an average of $125,000 a year. It doesn't matter if you have a PhD or a GED. In fact, 2/3 of our workforce does not have a college degree. We proudly hire a diverse workforce made of second chancers, union workers, veterans, single parents, the list goes on. At a time when the economy is suffering due to the pandemic, we can no longer afford to lose a single quality job in the Valley. Right now, Kern County's unemployment rate is higher than the state's average and almost 60% higher than it was a year ago. The Kern EIR proves that the economy and environment can both benefit from responsible oil and natural gas production, and I urge your aye vote. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
So our next 8-minute time slot goes to Gardner Farms. Keith Gardner, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6, you have 8 minutes to address the board.
I'm sorry, did you call for Keith Gardner?
Yes, sir, we did.
Thank you. Chairman Peters and members of the Board of Supervisors, good morning. My name is Keith Gardner. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you this morning on the subject of your supplemental recirculated EIR that is under consideration for your approval. My family owns and operates King and Gardner Farms and Pacific Ag Management. Our family heritage in Kern County and the city of Bakersfield goes back for over 120 years. I trust that you will find my conversation to be honest, sincere, and reflective of the longtime care and commitment our family has for this community. Contrary to comments made by representatives of the oil industry and even members of your planning staff, I'm not alone in asking our decision makers to get the environmental analysis right and address the significant impacts we as farmers deal with during the conversion of our farms to oil fields. Over 35 farming families in the Shafter and Wasco area joined with us to pass oil-related legislation, AB 1966, in 2012 in Sacramento. Those same families stood with us to comment on the 2015 version of your oil and gas EIR. Many of these same families stand with us again today. I'm not against oil. I receive dividends from oil production on our properties. Many of my best friends work locally in the oil industry. Personally, I'm pro-business, I'm pro this county, but I'm also pro-agriculture and I love farming. In my opinion, it's the greatest industry on earth. It's not too much for us to ask for clean air, clean water, and a beautiful landscape for us all to be proud of. I'm discouraged that I have to be here again this morning to once again plead to you as our decision makers to get this EIR right. In November 2015, your board unanimously approved the county and oil industry's EIR. In 2020, after challenges by King and Gardner Farms and others, the 3-judge appellate court overturned your decision. The court demanded that the county revise the environmental analysis and mitigation measures to comply with CEQA. The court actually ruled that the county's claim that the EIR protected farmland was unfounded. Its ruling required more, not less mitigation for impacts to agriculture. But instead of making the EIR better, the current EIR removes mitigation for farmland loss. While the old EIR required conservation easements, which are used all over California to protect farmland, the new EIR throws these away. And it puts huge new loopholes in the mitigation it does include for the removal of old oil equipment. In the end, the ordinance allows oil drilling to put thousands of acres of good farmland out of production. The oil industry should fully make up for that loss, acre for acre. This is what CEQA requires. Instead, the county wants to adopt a statement of overriding considerations, suggesting that real mitigation for farmland loss is infeasible and that the county's tax dollars from oil revenues are far more important than the loss of our farms. Let me say that again. The county is stating that oil tax revenues are far more important than the loss of our farmland. Even though agriculture is the largest employer in Kern County, and our county is the #1 county in the whole United States for the value of our ag commodities and products that we produce. We are the breadbasket of the world. That's why we're called the Golden Empire. As my attorney will explain, an independent economist has prepared a report showing that the proposed statement of overriding considerations is off base. It doesn't even address losses to farmland, even though the ag industry brings in far more income to local residents than the oil industry does. If the county does not do the right thing now, I believe the appellate court will once again find this flippant dismissal of farmland impacts hard to comprehend, and we will find ourselves right back here in the future. In 1972, then Governor Ronald Reagan signed into law the California Environmental Quality Act. This act means that projects like oil drilling require proper environmental review and mitigation. But 49 years later, after this law was passed, Kern County still cannot get it right. So here we are again, almost 6 years later, after the appellate court overturned the county's EIR, after millions of dollars have been spent and time wasted fighting in courts, and the oil industry today cannot pull a permit to drill for oil in Kern County. Why? Whose fault is it? There are those that will say it's my fault, or the fault of the environmental groups. Don't blame us. This is your EIR. The courts have found it's your fault for not following the law as CEQA intends. Let me remind you, many farmers have experience with valuable crops lost because of produced water and chlorides in our fresh irrigation water. Many farmers have experience with pipelines and equipments on their properties that have been there for more than 50 to 60 years, yet oil companies refuse to remove these hazards even though they're no longer being used. We, the farmer, pay the property taxes, school and water assessments, but we can't get the use of our property back for farming even after the oil industry is done producing their oil. It is your duty as this governing board to get this EIR right. Please listen to and follow the recommendations that we have offered in comments to your supplemental recirculated EIR. Don't bow to political pressure. Don't bow to those who say it will hurt tax revenues. Don't place oil over ag. Stand by your convictions and do what's right as our governing board. You're the only ones that we can turn to. Good environmental review and good mitigation will be good for both ag and oil. Protecting ag land will be good for the entire community, not just one segment of our community. Passage of a good project under CEQA, as painful as this process has been, will benefit and not hurt the job-producing industries of this county. Before I conclude, I have one last comment. Since the defeat of the county's EIR in 2020, I have noticed a greater willingness for members of the oil community to work with members of the ag community, particularly from Crimson Resources and the California Resource Corporation. It's this cooperation is welcome, and it can be the way of our future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gardner.
Thank you. Our next 8-minute slot of time goes to the Central California Environmental Justice Network. We have 3 speakers. We're going to start with Ingrid Brostrom, and then Dr. Rosanna Esparza, PhD, and then Cesar Aguirre. Ms. Brostrom, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6, your group has 8 minutes to speak.
Good morning. My name is Ingrid Brostrom with the Center on Race, Poverty, and the Environment. And I want to start by acknowledging that we should all want the same things for Kern County. We want a strong and stable economy. We want good, plentiful, and accessible jobs for Kern residents. And we want communities that are healthy with clean air and water. However, this ordinance offers none of these things. Instead, oil drilling has become a liability for the county. Oil production has been in continual decline since 1985. California's oil is low quality, it's heavy, it's expensive to extract, and it's only becoming increasingly more so. And as profit margins narrow, the region will face higher job losses, and the county will tie itself to an inconsistent and unstable tax base. In fact, property taxes from oil have fallen by more than 50% between 2010 and 2019. And the region is constantly battered by boom and bust cycles, including just back in 2014 to 2016. And when this happens, every person in Kern feels the impacts. Workers are laid off, families struggle to pay bills, and the county's budget is stretched to its breaking point. And there is a saying, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. The oil industry has already come at a heavy price for Kern. The county's past dependence on the sector has not brought wealth or stability to the region. Instead, the region consistently ranks near the top for poverty and unemployment rates in the state, and it has the worst air quality in the nation. Kern County is at a crossroads. The board has the opportunity to plan for a better future, to take advantage of Kern County's unique characteristics, including its warm climate, relatively inexpensive land prices, and its location linking the state's metropolitan areas. The board should work with advocates to bring state investment for brownfield remediation and electrification to the region and repair and improve its infrastructure. The county must plan for and invest in new sectors that will improve health and bring benefits to the region while offering stable employment opportunities for Kern residents, not out-of-state workers. We all know that difficult roads lie ahead for the oil industry. And rather than tie itself to a dying industry, the board should focus on creating new opportunities for Kern County residents, and especially the fossil fuel workers here. I urge you to reject this ordinance today. Thank you.
Dr. Esparza, please unmute your phone by pressing *6 and begin. If Dr. Esparza is not on the line, Cesar Aguirre, please unmute your phone and by pressing *6 and begin.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I know Rosana Esparza is on the line, so if we could give her a chance afterwards, that would be great. My name is Cesar Aguirre. I work with the Central California Environmental Justice Network as a community organizer, and I'd like to start off by thanking you for providing Spanish translation, as it is much needed in this county. We cannot expect responsibility from oil industry or oil companies to act in a way that will protect our environment or our public health. And I'll start off by reading a testimony from an oil worker that I spoke with over the weekend. I spent the majority of my career in the oil fields doing oil work and doing welding. I saw what they did, and I saw that they do things incorrectly in many things. For example, x-rays should be done on pipelines to make sure that they will not leak. All of the pipelines I saw laid did not have x-rays. This was to save money. It is dangerous to our environment if it leaks, and it could be years, if not generations, before it is found. This ordinance will only make it worse. This is from a worker that worked during the time of the approved environmental impact report in 2015 and 2016. In 2003, a 16-year leak that went on until 2019 in Semric happened, and the oil company responsible, all they did was create a concrete pool to catch that in the open air. Irresponsible. We cannot expect them to do better. Their actions put our soil and water in danger. The wastewater that they use is sometimes used on crops, and with a drought coming, farmers may be forced to use this. Trade secrets protect the chemicals that are in this wastewater and may be putting farm workers and the people that consume the produce in danger. And if it's not put on crops, it is injected into the ground. A study in 2016 here in Kern County showed that injecting oil wastewater produced a series of earthquakes in our home county. It puts our air in danger. PM 2.5, half of the PM 2.5 created in Kern County comes from 6 companies. All of those companies are oil companies. We have taken samples of air in oil and gas production. In particular, near Arvin, in Arvin, over 600 feet away from a site, show dangerous levels of benzene, methane, and formaldehyde, among other things. That, along with things like Rule 4623 from the local air district, make sure that small producers do not have to follow any air protection mitigation efforts. The 300-foot setback is insulting, as a 2,500-foot setback has been suggested by many studies that have been paid by California taxpayers. The 300-foot setback is only 12% of this necessary setback. It is insulting to frontline communities. We need better protection, and we need to make sure that we protect not only the environment and the economy, but our workers with this, as the workers that I have spoke to have seen nothing but irresponsibility in these oil fields. Thank you.
Dr. Esparza, you have a minute, 37 seconds.
I'm a gerontologist, and I'm a resident of Kern County. I'd like to say that California is a land of contrast. What I know as a reality is it's not just a contrast, it's a huge environmental justice difference. We have the Hollywood of Los Angeles, we have the tech hubs of Silicon Valley, and in Kern County, we have some of the poorest and most environmentally contaminated areas in the country. The impacts from oil and gas development are not widely acknowledged by the industry, but it is a reality for those who live in the area. These are the people that we're here to talk about today. Oil and gas development has been taking place in our Golden State since the 19th century, shaping most aspects of our life. But just because it was initiated in the 19th century doesn't mean that we in the 21st century should be using the same methods and the same mindset. Without our application of knowledge to change, we will continue to make the same mistakes over and over. I want to give you just a little overview of one of the chemicals that I'm most concerned about, and that is benzene. Benzene is associated with acute and long-term adverse health effects, diseases, including cancer. Why I chose to talk about benzene today is because most of the workers out in the oil fields happen to be males. Do the workers know that their sperm is being affected, that their chromosomes have aberrations, that impregnating women will cause, with this damaged sperm, will cause mutations? We always talk about low birth weight babies and why we have so many of them here in this county.
Dr.
Why is
Esparza,
that?
hey, you're about 30 seconds over your time limit already.
Well, I'm so sorry that I am out of time because I really wanted to educate the public about just one of the thousands of chemicals. Hopefully, we'll have another opportunity to do this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, that concludes the 8-minute presentations. We're now going to 2-minute time slots for all speakers. And I would like to remind everyone who's going to speak that you must have the volume off on any other device if you're watching, because it interferes with the audio. So our next speaker is Fernando Araujo. Please unmute your phone by pressing *6. You have 2 minutes to address the board.
My name is Fernando Araujo, Fernando Araujo. I'm the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer for Berry Corporation. First, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to speak on behalf of Berry, our employees, and oil and gas industry in Kern County. I'd also like to thank Director Oviat and her staff for their diligent work on the supplemental recirculated EIR. Berry is an independent publicly traded energy company which employs 356 people in Kern County and contributes over $13 million in local property taxes annually. Berry has roots in Kern County that reach back to 1909, and we are proud to be part of this community. I recently returned to Kern County in September of last year. I started my career right here in Kern County in 1991, and my family and I are delighted to be back. Bakersfield is our home. Nuestra compañía Berry emplea a 356 personas en el condado de Kern y contribuye por encima de $13 millones en impuestos locales. Nosotros estamos orgullosos de pertenecer a esta comunidad. En mi caso en particular, yo empecé mi profesión en Bakersfield ya hace 30 años. Con mi familia estamos muy contentos de regresar y formar parte de esta comunidad. I'm here today because I want to express Berry's deep commitment to the health and well-being of our employees, our families, and our community. We are proud of the safety performance, and we are committed to continuous improvement in this area, as demonstrated by our total recordable incident rate for 2020, which is 6 times lower than the incident rate for all U.S. general industries. We take pride in safely producing reliable, affordable, and equitable sourced energy under the strictest environmental standards in the world. We believe that both traditional and renewable energy produced in Kern County will be essential to meeting the state's carbon reduction goals and to providing the long-term economic vitality for this region. Our support of the supplemental recirculated EIR is consistent with our commitment to the health and well-being of our employees and community.
Thank you very much, Mr. Araujo.
Our next speaker is Mr. Anibal Araya. Mr. Araya, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6, you have 2 minutes to address the board.
Yes. Yes. Good morning, Chairman Peters and Supervisors. My name is Anibal Araya, and I'm a proud Kern County resident. I live here, I work here, and I'm raising my family here in Bakersfield. I am the Vice President of Regulatory Affairs and Asset Retirement for CRC. CRC is a publicly traded oil and natural gas company that operates exclusively in California. CRC's workforce of over 4,000 employees and contractors operates a world-class asset base of 130 fields, processing and power plants, safely and responsibly supplying affordable and reliable energy for California by Californians. I'm here today on behalf of my family, my coworkers, and my community to ask that you certify the supplemental recirculated environmental impact report, adopt the updated county and oil and gas ordinance, and reinstate the local land use control over the oil and gas activities that are critical to every person in Kern County, the Central Valley, and the state of California. Ever-increasing regulations on Kern County's primary employer and largest taxpayer, the oil and gas industry, have led to decreased investments in Kern County, loss of good-paying jobs, and greater dependence on foreign imports. California is currently dependent on energy imports of over 70% of our crude oil demand, 90% of our natural gas, and even 30% of our electricity, all from places that don't apply California's leading safety, labor, human rights, and environmental standards. In recent years, our dependence on imported oil has grown significantly. During the last 5 years, Kern County has protected Californians from being hopelessly dependent on imported energy. Kern County is unique in serving as California's leading supplier of food and energy for the state, and is truly the all-of-the-above energy champion, promoting oil, natural gas, and renewable energy and infrastructure that powers our great state. If we want to achieve a more inclusive and sustainable society, Kern County's diverse, reliable, and local energy supply should serve as a model for the entire state. I urge your board to stand with Kern County and the working men and women of the Central Valley to make California more self-sufficient and help to ensure that every last drop of oil consumed in California meets California standards. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here today.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Eric Barcht. Eric, Mr. Barcht, if you will unmute your phone by pressing *6, you have 2 minutes to address.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Eric Barch. I am the President and CEO of Era Energy, LLC. Good morning, Honorable Chairman Peters and other members of the Kern County Board of Supervisors. I'd first like to thank Director Lorelei Oviatt and her staff for the vision and leadership overseeing the current EIR, this SREIR, and the oil and gas ordinance. Even accounting for the bold climate goals the state has set, we see demand for production of Kern County oil for years and decades to come. I'm proud to see Kern County taking the role of lead agency for CEQA review of oil and gas development and related activities here in Kern County. It speaks to the commitment we all have to responsibly produce the oil this state needs. And it's only fitting since Kern leads the state in oil production. Ms. Oviatt and her team and countless others have spent the last year addressing the specific issues identified by the court. Their jobs have been complicated by the challenges of trying to conduct a public process during COVID. I tip my hat to them for taking extraordinary steps to make the plan available to the public through virtual meetings and even providing a second comment period to ensure all voices were heard and relevant concerns adequately addressed. Kern County has forged a leadership role in building and refining a process for safely and responsibly producing oil, a process not seen anywhere else. Your process is now using 5 years of permitting data collected since the ordinance first went into effect in December 2015 to respond to the court's questions and validate your processes. We support the county's comprehensive and thorough review of the issues outlined by the court and believe this work is an important step to assure the people of Kern County that we are indeed producing oil safely and under some of the most stringent requirements of the world. I urge your approval of the SREIR, a multi-agency public and industrial collaborative effort that allows us to continue to produce oil in a manner that protects human health, the environment, and the economic vitality of Kern.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Billy Lackaby. Mr. Lackaby, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6.
Good morning, Chairman Peters and members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. I am Billy Lackaby, Vice President of Chevron San Joaquin Valley Business Unit, headquartered here in Bakersfield. Chevron is one of the largest producers in California, with most of our oil fields operating here in Kern County for well over a century. Protecting people and the environment is a core value for Chevron, so we appreciate the county's work on this important and comprehensive environmental review. The adoption of the SREIR and reimplementation of the county's oil and gas permitting structure are critical to the long-term sustainability of our industry and businesses which support us all in Kern County. Chevron employs about 750 people in San Joaquin Valley Business Unit. Approximately 1,800 additional people are employed by our contractors, many of which are local companies. We are committed to investing in the community. In the last 5 years, Chevron has contributed over $15 million to support nonprofits and community organizations that make Kern County a better place to live and work. We are also committed to addressing the risk of climate change while delivering affordable, reliable, and ever cleaner energy. We are making local investments toward a lower carbon future, including a solar project that powers our Lost Hills field and a pilot of carbon capture technology at our Kern River field. Our industry has agreed to significant measures to achieve local permitting in an environmentally sound structure. I respectfully ask that you approve and adopt the SREIR to provide increased assurance of safety and environmental responsibility while allowing us to continue operating here for many years to come. On behalf of all of us at Chevron, thank you for your support and leadership.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Danny Gracia. Mr. Gracia, please unmute your phone by pressing *6.
Board of Supervisors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Danny Gracia. I'm the General Manager at Scarborough Well Services. I've been a resident in Kern County for the past 42 years. I'm the youngest of 4 boys. My parents moved here from the 70s from Texas to a small town just west of Bakersfield called Bump Willow. My dad worked the farms day out and to provide for the families. In 1991, my dad took my two older brothers to work for them at the cotton gin. My brothers worked there for about 4 years when they got offered a job working on an oil rig. They accepted. I witnessed my brothers live and provide a better life for their families. In 1997, I graduated from high school. I planned to go to Bayfield College. However, my plan shifted when my older brother asked if I needed a good paying summer job. I accepted his offer and started working on an oil rig. I was 18, making almost $2,000 every 2 weeks. I never enrolled myself into college. I showed up to work every day, even worked on my days off when needed. I was in charge of the projects with 8 workers. This position taught me lots of responsibilities and knowledge and skills. I continued to work hard, and that hard work paid off. On January 15th of 2021, I became the general manager at Excalibur Well Services, overseeing operations and 150 employees. Never in the 24 years working in the oil industry did I ever think this was possible. I made it from the bottom to the top. My intentions coming into the oil field was to provide a good life for my families, like my brothers and friends. I did more than that. I made a career out of it. I gave my family more than I ever imagined. I bought my house at the age of 21. I paid it off at the age of 38. I have a beautiful wife and 3 beautiful children. While working at Excalibur Well Services, I provided a better living for my family so my wife can be a stay-at-home mom. Thank you for the time and the opportunity to share my story and speak on behalf of all the oil field workers at Excalibur making a good living here in Kern County. I respectfully ask for your continued support of us and our families, as well as the supplemental recirculated environmental impact report.
Thank you. We now are going to hear from a Spanish speaker, so I would like our interpreter, Liz Candela, to come up to the podium. Ms. Candela, if you would, in Spanish, invite the next speaker, who is Refugio Valencia Gutierrez. Go ahead and invite him to speak.
Señor Refugio Valencia Gutiérrez, ¿puede quitar su teléfono de silencio? Señor Valencia Gutiérrez.
¿Me escucha?
Sí.
Ok.
Señor Gutiérrez.
You may need to press
escucha?
*6. Oh, there we go.
Señor Gutiérrez. Sí. Imprima la estrella 6. Señor Valencia, imprima la estrella 6 y empieza a hablar.
¿Me escucha?
Sí.
Ok. Mire, mi comentario es acerca de la industria del aceite y pues sí, yo quiero decir que los trabajadores de la industria del aceite son muy importantes, pero el resto de la comunidad del condado es más importante porque son muchas más las personas afectadas, las que están siendo por la industria del aceite. Entonces, le pedimos a los supervisores del condado que cuando ellos hagan una decisión, la hagan a favor de la comunidad y no de las compañías petroleras, que son las que están usando a los trabajadores para traerlos a que aboguen por sus trabajos. Los trabajadores deben de abogar por sus trabajos en sus áreas de trabajo, no acá. Yo opino que los supervisores deben de apoyar más bien a decenas de cientos de miles de trabajadores que están siendo afectados por la industria del aceite. Entonces, los trabajadores del aceite andan presumiendo que ganan mucho dinero, que tienen casas grandes, que se van de vacaciones a otros países, cuando sus trabajos a nosotros, los que no trabajamos en el área del aceite, nos están dejando tanta contaminación y problemas de salud. Ellos viajando y nosotros viajando, pero a visitar las clínicas por los problemas de salud que nos está dejando la industria del aceite. Entonces, yo abogo porque no aprueben esa ordenanza y más bien que los supervisores se enfoquen en mejorar nuestras condiciones de vida y de salud. También sabemos que la extracción del aceite al momento de extraerlo está ocasionándole daños a la vegetación en esas áreas y tanto a nuestros residentes en todo el condado. Siempre nosotros hemos estado mirando cómo podemos abogar por nuestras comunidades. Entonces yo opino que los supervisores no apoyen esa ordenanza. Gracias.
My name is Refugio Valencia Gutierrez, and I am here to comment on the oil industry. I know that the oil workers, they are important, but what about the rest of the community? It has affected people. I'm asking the supervisors to make a decision, but also in favor of the community. These workers, you know, they advocate for themselves, and the opinion is only for them. They talk about, you know, making big bucks, their houses, going on vacation, but they don't realize all of the contamination. They talk about traveling. Well, we travel too, but to the clinics. This oil industry has caused so much damage, and I oppose this ordinance, and I ask the supervisors to make a decision based on the life and health of the community. You know, also, when it comes to extracting the oil, it is harmful in the area. They should advocate for the community, so I do not support this ordinance.
Thank you, Ms. Candela.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Dr. Mary Barlow. Dr. Barlow, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6, you have 2 minutes.
Mary Barlow, M-A-R-Y-B-A-R-L-O-W. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Mary Barlow, and I have the honor of serving as your Kern County Superintendent of Schools. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the 47 school districts serving over 198,000 students. Kern County is a county of great challenges. Over 30% of children live in poverty. However, Kern also has great promise. Our population increased by over 9% in the past 10 years, and children represent 1/3 of the population. So any loss in the single largest economic driver in our county will disproportionately impact our youth. The taxes the petroleum industry pays help fund school construction and daily operations that ensure students are prepared to become productive, contributing citizens. In fact, almost 59% of local property taxes go to school districts. Many Kern County districts have passed school bonds to modernize facilities, including advanced career technical education centers, to meet tomorrow's workforce needs. Any immediate impact to the petroleum industry may result in a decline in assessed valuation, putting district finances and bond repayment at risk. There is no doubt we are a county, a state, and a world in transition. The petroleum industry is also in transition. However, we need to carefully plan any transition with the forward-thinking industry experts, because petroleum is a necessary resource and a primary driver of our economy. I believe education and employment are the great equalizers, providing families with the keys to be successful in life. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your partnership. And please, as you make policy decisions, please remember the children.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kevin Bundy. Mr. Bundy, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6.
Good morning, Chair Peters and members of the board. My name is Kevin Bundy. I'm an attorney at Shute, Mahoney & Weinberger, and I'm appearing this morning on behalf of King & Gardner Farms. We have multiple comment letters and expert reports in the record showing that the supplemental recirculated EIR, findings of fact, and statement of overriding considerations all fail to comply with CEQA and the decision of the Court of Appeal. The county's responses, including those posted at 9 o'clock this morning, have not addressed the problems detailed in those letters and reports. I won't try to summarize those problems here, but just highlight a couple of issues with the Statement of Overriding Considerations, which is one-sided and misleading. First, as detailed in the economic report Mr. Gardner referenced in his comments, the statement completely fails to address harm to the county's agricultural economy. The EIR admits that several thousand acres of farmland could be lost to drilling in the next 15 to 25 years at a rate of almost 300 acres per year. Agriculture is a pillar of Kern County's economy and tax base. And while oil company profits tend to flow mostly out of the county, a far greater proportion of agricultural economic input remains in the county in the form of personal income. The statement ignores agriculture's overall contribution to the local economy and revenues. The county also refused to adopt feasible mitigation for agricultural impacts. For example, we recommended an effective program to clean up abandoned oil and gas junk and equipment. This could actually generate a lot of good jobs, but the Statement of Overriding Considerations ignores the economic impact of this measure. Second, the statement relies almost entirely on the gross economic impact of oil and gas and property tax revenues to the county. But this tells you nothing about the benefits of approving this particular ordinance as opposed to not approving it or approving something that's more protective of farmland. As a result, the statement doesn't provide you with the information necessary to make an informed decision about whether the benefits of the ordinance outweigh its many significant impacts. The county cannot lawfully proceed with the ordinance based on this EIR findings and Statement of Overriding Considerations. The county needs to fix these problems before it considers approval of the ordinance. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Clint Olivier. Mr. Olivier, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Peters, Supervisors, and thank you for the opportunity to comment. My name is Clint Olivier, and I'm the CEO of Central Valley Business Federation, or BizFed, a grassroots alliance of nearly 70 businesses and organizations representing 30,000 diverse employers and over 400,000 employees here in the Central Valley. We have our roots here in Kern County, with the majority of our members working and running their businesses in the region. At BizFed, we believe a thriving economy will help solve many of our area's entrenched challenges, and that any disruption to the permitting structure will result in great economic loss and a lower standard of living for thousands of families across the county. At BizFed, we believe regulators and policymakers should remain technology neutral and encourage the market to innovate while balancing affordability, reliability, cost effectiveness, and available technology for consumers. At BizFed, we support an all-of-the-above approach to our energy needs. Electricity provides important power to many buildings and vehicles. Clean natural gas provides an affordable option to businesses and residents. And oil gives millions of California consumers the mobility they need to go to work and school. Along that vein, we believe Kern County should continue to lead the way in oil and gas, just as we lead the way in wind and solar. We urge you to approve the SREIR, which has been the product of years of environmental review and extensive public hearings. This is good energy policy that will continue to bolster the economy and will continue to create jobs and improve lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Amy Roth. Ms. Roth, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6. I'm not showing Ms. Roth in the queue. Let's go to our next speaker, Tracy Leach. Tracy Leach, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6.
Chairman Peters, Director of Kern Citizens for Energy. As you know, we're the largest coalition of supporters of locally produced oil and natural gas in the region. We're made up of many, many thousands of voters in Kern County, hundreds of small business owners, 11 chambers of commerce, our largest public safety organizations, and most of our incorporated cities. We're proud to represent each and every one of these as they embody the very best of our home, Kern County. On the other hand, we are disappointed to see some anti-oil activists resorting to harassing and bullying our elected representatives during this process. There is truly no place for that abhorrent behavior in our community. Fortunately, nevertheless, we're grateful the majority of people respectfully express their opinions as we continue these important conversations. We live in a wonderful county, due in no small part to the generations of hardworking people in oil and in ag who continue to provide the food and energy that our state so desperately needs. So we'll continue to point out that every person in our state, including everyone commenting today, consumes enormous amounts of petroleum products on a daily basis. Very simply, we should get those products right here, made by the people of Kern County and not imported from the Middle East or from anywhere else. Support for this exhaustive environmental review and re-implementation of our permitting program ensures that we continue producing these natural resources under the strictest environmental health and safety standards in the world. The majority of Kern County citizens support our incredible energy industry. And we say thank you to Ms. Oviatt and our hardworking planning department staff for their expertise and professionalism, ensuring that we continue to feed and power all of California and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Nick Ortiz. Mr. Ortiz, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6.
Morning. Good morning, Chairman Peters and members of the board. I'm Nick Ortiz, the President and CEO of the Greater Bakersfield Chamber. I'd like to start by noting that the petroleum industry isn't just a sector of the economy or an industrial activity. For generations, oil and gas, along with agriculture, has been part of our community's culture. Just like we can't separate movie making from Hollywood or the Silicon Chip from Silicon Valley, oil is a part of this region's DNA, and an important part, albeit not just for our area, but the entire state. What we do in Kern County doesn't happen in a vacuum. The hard work of thousands of people who produce oil, grow food, harness the wind and sun to create energy, and move products through our logistics centers, just to name a few of the things we do here, literally and figuratively power the state of California. Our state's economy relies on energy and mobility, and our region is the linchpin, providing the resources many take for granted. So while some may sum up this question before the Board of Supervisors today as, how will one industry benefit from your decision? Really, the scenario is, how will millions of Californians suffer if your board fails to act? As I said, oil production in Kern County has gone back generations. And just like any activity, experience, technology, and ingenuity can make it better. And that's where we are today. This program before you provides the most comprehensive set of protections and the most environmentally sensitive way to produce oil and gas. At the Chamber, we're proud to be a part of and champion initiatives that seek to grow and diversify Kern County's economy. We think that's important work, and that economic growth must be used as a tool to reduce inequity. But it's important to note that the oil industry for many years has provided pathways to prosperity for thousands of people through good, high-paying jobs that lift families out of poverty. We encourage the board to approve the SREIR and updated ordinance, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is John Spalding. Mr. Spalding, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6. John Spalding, I know you're in the queue. If you would unmute your phone by pressing *6, you may address the board. We're going to move to our next speaker, and that is Richard Garcia. Mr. Garcia, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6. Richard Garcia, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6, you may address the board. Okay, let's move to our next speaker, Rick Schoengert. Mr. Schoengert, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6. I'm not seeing Mr. Schoengert in the queue. Kimberly Gila? Kimberly Gila, you're the next speaker. If you would unmute your phone by pressing *6. If Kimberly Gila is not ready, let's go with Jackie Barshak. Jackie Barshak, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6.
My name is Jackie Barshak, and I am a member of the California Environmental Justice Coalition and a member of the Democratic Socialists of America Eco-Socialist Committee. So I am really struck by air pollution from oil and gas drilling. This is a threat to my family's health. In Kern County, people are already exposed to some of the worst air pollution in the nation. Oil and gas drilling is the leading cause, and the science is clear. Drilling is not safe for people living, working, going to school nearby. I am really concerned about climate change. I'm a climate change activist. And drilling and burning fossil fuels is directly linked to climate change. The toxic wastewater from this oil and gas drilling, it's used for irrigating crops, food that I eat. I'm really concerned about the health risks that I am subjected to every time I sit down to eat a meal. Look, Kern County needs to invest not in those jobs that Chevron is talking about. It needs to invest in well-paying green jobs that are safe for me, for my family, and for this community. I can't count on this dying oil and gas industry to provide a reliable source of jobs for me. The oil companies will leave as soon as it's no longer profitable for them. Listen, we need to diversify our economy, and we need elected officials like you to lead this trend so we can be proactive and benefit from the growth of green jobs in the state.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jim Elrod. Mr. Elrod, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6.
My name is Jim Elrod, E-L-R-O-D. I am a lifelong resident of Kern County. I am the business manager, financial secretary of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 428, that represents over 800 men and women that work in the electrical industry in Kern County. On behalf of the members of IBEW Local 428, we are in support of staff's recommendation of the supplemented recirculated EIR for the oil and gas industry. We would also like to thank Ms. Oviatt and her staff for all the hard work on this EIR and the hard work on the EIRs for the green energy that Kern County is one of the leading counties in the country. Right now we have over 3 gigs of solar energy on the books for the next 3 to 5 years. So I do believe that Kern County is well diversified in the gas and oil industry and green industry. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Riddhi Patel. Ms. Patel, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6.
Hi. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Hi, my name is Riddhi Patel. I myself have asthma, as well as many other friends and family members that have some kind of respiratory illness or disorder. We already suffer the effects of the existing pollution that comes from the 78,000 oil and gas wells that exist near our communities, and we should not be allowed to be sacrificed when we can clearly allow oil and gas workers a just transition and job protection if the oil industry matches us, which they won't because they're cowards. We need to listen to environmental justice and labor justice groups while we decarbonize the Kern County economy. But more than anything, I don't think people should have to die for this ordinance, because it's not going to be the rich white suburbs that are affected. It's Black, Latinx, and low-income communities that will be. We need better union jobs, and we are not going to let our communities be sacrificed for a few rich white men, while even workers have to expose themselves to dangerous, unsafe conditions just to put food on the table. They deserve job protections, and our communities deserve the right to live healthy lives. And if you actually lived in Kern County, you'd understand that the oil and gas industry here blackmails teachers and school leaders and other community leaders in Kern, that if they speak out against the industry, they will literally pull funding from the classrooms, hurting the children in Kern County. This industry doesn't care about us. I call on the Board of Supervisors, specifically my supervisor, David Couch, to stop the passing of revisions to Title 19 Kern County zoning ordinance, because 34,000 Californians died premature deaths because of the fossil fuel industry. They don't get that time with families, with birthdays, at weddings, watching their kids graduate. If you choose to approve this ordinance, this blood will be on your hands.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Emmeline Kinsey. Ms. Kinsey, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6. We're waiting to hear from Emmeline Kinsey. Ms. Kinsey, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6, you may address the board.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Hello, my name is Emmeline Kinsey. Emmeline is spelled E-M-M-A-L-I-N-E. Kinsey is spelled K-I-N-S-E-Y. I'm 11 years old and I live in Delano, California, District 4. Just a sudden warning. Did you know about global warming? This is not an activist movement. I'm not doing this just for amusement. Hey, David Couch, are you leaving me about fresh water or clean air? Or sitting around without a care? This is not an act, this is a movement. I'll be knocking on your door every season or even more. I'm not doing this just for amusement. Please vote no so I can have the better future that you are trying to route for me. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We are going back to John Spalding. Mr. Spalding, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6, you may address the board.
Did he ever say anything else?
Mr. Spalding, we're not able to hear you. Maybe you should call in again. I'll come back to you. So at this time, we're going to Richard Garcia.
Hello, this is John Spalding.
Oh, okay, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
Yes, this is John Spalding. Good morning, Chairman Peters and Supervisors. My name is John Spalding. That's S-P-A-U-L-D-I-N-G. I'm the Executive Secretary for the Kern, Inyo, and Mono Counties Building and Construction Trades Council. We represent nearly 6,000 construction workers who wholeheartedly support the SR-EIR presented to your board today for approval. This SR-EIR will help restore our independence and economy here in Kern County and California. Our demand continues to be at a high level, and we need to produce our own oil and gas rather than import more. We already import over 70% from countries that do not adhere to the strict policies and procedures that we do here. The oil and gas industry is continuing to improve the extraction procedures for the safety and well-being of those around. They are also helping in the development of new and alternative methods of energy. They have proven to be good neighbors and contributors to the economy of our community. Again, please approve the SR-EIR and for the economy here in Kern County and California. Put our industry to work. Our demand continues to be at a high level.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Richard.
70% from countries that do not adhere.
Our next speaker is Richard Garcia. Mr. Garcia, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6.
Procedures for the safety and well-being of those.
Can you hear me?
Richard Garcia?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Economy of our community.
Okay. Good morning, Supervisors.
Mr. Garcia, if you have the meeting going on, you need to mute your television or your computer.
No, that was John Spalding kind of riding over me for some reason.
Okay, well,
But anyway.
Mr. Spalding's time has expired, so now it's your time.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, Supervisors. My name is Richard Garcia. I'm a resident of Buttonwillow, California, a western Kern County community adjacent to the large Elk Hills oil field. I've lived at this residence here for the past 48 years, coming to Buttonwillow to teach at the school back in the 1970s. I would like to give comments in support of the Kern County SEIR. I know there's an effort by the existing state administration to reduce in-state petroleum production. It makes more sense environmentally to do the exact opposite. Electric cars, hybrid cars, solar energy, all are great and needed, but we need more California oil as a transition fuel to these cleaner technologies. We need more California oil to reduce global greenhouse gas emissions, less oil coming from overseas. We need it for the safety and protection of our California shoreline and associated wildlife and recreation. Again, less oil tankers coming from overseas. We need more California oil for good paying jobs and professions it creates, and for the thousands of connected businesses that rely on oil production for their success. Many of these businesses, like the one I work for, are women-owned, minority-owned companies that need these jobs. We need more California oil for the state revenues to fund our schools and first responders, to support and fund preserved endangered species conservation lands for valuable habitats, our state parks and scenic wildlands. In closing, many state mandates do not take into account the effect on people living below the poverty line. That is the people that the restrictions on oil production will hit the hardest. The folks that cannot afford expensive energy to heat their homes or expensive energy to transport them from job to job. So approval of the EIR is needed for continued state and global environmental improvements and for the production of much needed California oil. We need more clean California oil, not less. Thank you. For valuable habitat.
Thank you.
Our state.
Our next speaker is Kimberly Gila. Ms. Gila, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6, you may address the board. Go ahead and address the board, Ms. Gila. Ms. Gila, your phone is unmuted. However, we are not hearing you.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, this is Kimberly Gila. I'm a California native, and I'm very familiar from the area. I not commute. You know, when I go to Las Vegas on I-5 and I see the dirty air of Bakersfield, the worst air quality, and oil people.
Ms. Gila, your phone is unmuted. However, we are not hearing you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Hello?
We can hear you. Keep speaking.
Okay, well, anyway,
the oil people, when they drill, it affects the ecosystems, and it goes to the nearby communities, such as the farmland and the residents. And the need now is for renewable energy, natural resources, wind, solar. That still brings jobs to the community, and also profits to oil companies. So this needs to be looked into. You can Google pros and cons of oil drilling on the internet. It says so. And so this is, climate change is real, and this will bring jobs for the people, and it keeps jobs in America, California. And I have a friend, a few years ago, her brother got lung disease. It's probably due for it's a lot of factors here. Car emissions, things from the ecosystems from the oil drilling. So it's affecting people's health. And the farmland should be saved. With climate change, food will become scarce in the future, and the water is a precious commodity. So these are factors. And thank you for allowing me to talk, and thank you, commissioners, for listening to all the people. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Russell Johnson. Mr. Johnson, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6, you may address the board.
Good morning, Chairman Peters, members of the board. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. I am calling on behalf of the Associated Builders and Contractors. The ABC operates a workforce development training center in Kern County. At that workforce development training center, we train the workers in the oil and gas industry. Since 2018, nearly 35,000 individuals attended some sort of safety or craft training at our workforce development training center. We stand in support of the Supplemental Environmental Impact Report for the Kern County Oil and Gas, and we just urge your board to approve it. First, it raised the bar in terms of protections not only for the community, but for the workers that we train. In the EIR is a requirement called the Worker Environmental Awareness Plan. Through that Worker Environmental Awareness Plan, it helps increase safety for all the workers out in the oil and gas fields. With that, we stand in support. We encourage your board to stand up for the approval of the supplemental EIR. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Next speaker is Mr. Eddie Pena. Eddie Pena, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6, you may address the board.
Good morning, members of the board. My name is Eddie Pena. I'm a business representative for the Heat and Frost Insulators of Southern California. We stand in support of the EIR and the approval. Our industry depends on the oil and gas. We have members living all throughout Southern California, and many live in the Bakersfield, Kern area. The current economical status for people in the Bakersfield area is to, of course, get a living wage going. With the growth of the industry, there will be new job opportunities through the MC3 program, and through the unions will provide local residents with a chance to live the American dream. With that being said, once again, I stand in support of the EIR and the approval of the project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lori Pasante. Ms. Pasante, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6, you may address the board.
Good morning, members of the board, Chairman Peters. My name is Lori Pesante, Pesante. I'm a constituent of Mr. Peters, and I live in the vicinity of White Lane and Buena Vista Road. I'm calling this morning as a mom and a resident to encourage the board to vote no, because despite lots of public comment and lots of participation from industry, I have yet to hear us have certain conversations related to the dependence that we clearly have on tax revenue from oil and gas, and the diversification of tax revenue, especially in the form of industries that are clearly such a huge part of our lifestyle. It is a beautiful thing that we grow the food that feeds the world, and yet I read projections that tell me that within the next 50 years, 70% of our agricultural capacity will be decimated. And we're already experiencing extreme weather events that give me great concern for the viability of our current infrastructure to withstand the kinds of extreme weather events that it was never designed to withstand. I think also that we're not really talking about transition education in the way that we should, and I would like to see us have more conversations about that, because 15% of our community members have bachelor's degrees, but the state has 32%. The future is pretty clear, and I want not just the families that are working in the oil industry now, like my neighbors and family members and colleagues, but future families to be able to have good jobs with benefits and retirement and livable wages. So, Mr. Peters, I'll be following up with your office because I very much want to make sure that we have these conversations in more than just 2-minute chunks. I appreciate your time today. Please vote no on this ordinance until we can have these kinds of conversations.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Darius Pesante. Darius Pesante, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6.
Good morning. My name is Darius Pesante, D-A-R-U-S, P-E-S-A-N-T-E. I'm 10 years old. I live in Mr. Peters' district. When my mom and I went on a bike ride on Saturday, we stopped at a park. From this park, we saw many oil wells close by. I noticed that wherever there was an oil well, there was nothing growing near it. There are many things we need to check out before we can have more oil wells. I know that we've had big oil spills here, one right near where my Uncle Sherman worked. I also know that we got a notice that says that we have a chemical called TCP-123 in my houses and also at my school's water. Please say no to more oil wells. Thank you for listening and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jamie Briseño. Jamie Briseño, please unmute your phone by pressing *6. I'm not seeing Mr. Briseño in the queue. Let's go with Daniel Ress. Daniel Ress, R-E-S-S. Please unmute your phone by pressing *6 and address the board.
Poverty and the environment. I focus on statewide oil and gas policy, but I'm here in my personal capacity as a community member living in Kern County. In my work, I've read dozens of studies about the harmful effects of oil and gas drilling for people living, working, and playing nearby. I've read about how extraction tends to happen near low-income communities of color. I've read about increases in cancer, in asthma, in heart conditions. I've read about worse perinatal outcomes, from increased preterm birth to increased birth defects. That last one really sticks for me. My wife is pregnant, and as an expectant parent, I worry about increased oil and gas extraction in my community. I worry about what that might do to our child, both before and after they're born. I worry about what will happen if we decide to have another child. Only at that point, we're living next door to an oil rig. Will our child have birth defects they wouldn't have had? Will our kid get asthma, cancer? I'm worried. And the community members I speak to are worried too. The science says we should be worried, that we should have protective setbacks of at least 2,500 feet from homes, schools, and hospitals within which oil and gas extraction is prohibited. We should prioritize public health. We should prioritize our children's lives. This ordinance proposes setbacks of only 210 feet from homes and 300 feet from schools. That is ridiculous, and it may well hurt my children. Other states like Texas, Wyoming, and North Dakota all have statewide oil and gas setbacks of about 500 feet. Colorado just put in place 2,000-foot setbacks. That's almost 10 times what the county is considering. 34,000 people die every year just from particulate matter from existing oil and gas pollution in California already. Yet the county proceeds with greenlighting tens of thousands of oil and gas wells to join the almost 80,000 wells already here with a single environmental review. That is as dangerous as it is irresponsible. Please don't put my unborn children in harm's way.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sharon Breel. Sharon Breel, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6, you may address the board.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors and the public. I am Sharon Breel, a resident in District 1 and a member of the Sierra Club. I am on the executive board for the Kern Cahuilla chapter of the Sierra Club. My purpose is to ask you to oppose the ordinance as it does not adequately protect the citizens you are charged to protect. I read the staff report and can see that a lot of work was done. As you know, there's 72 binders. Kern County has the worst air quality in the United States, so adding more oil and gas wells doesn't protect the citizens from the problems caused by air pollution. For example, the lower life expectancy seen in Kern County is the lowest in California. The image of Kern's brown haze does not promote a positive image in terms of our community. I can remember, I'm not from here originally, I've lived here for over 20 years. I can remember the first time I saw the moonscape below the panorama bluffs. It really was shocking to see how the oil fields destroy the natural environment. Nothing will grow there. So more wells on ag land will only destroy that land and make it unusable. I'm concerned about how the ordinance will be monitored. With 78,116 active wells currently, and the ordinance then adding another 2,697 wells per year for the next 20 years, I'm concerned about how you're going to keep track of all of these wells. It appears from the staff report that self-certification process will be used, and I'm wondering exactly how you will ensure that the 87 mitigation measures are actually done adequately and properly. My last comment has to do with mitigation. Mitigation to me really doesn't solve the problem. Yes, it's great that the oil industry process sent $114 million to the Air Quality Control Agency to help another community somewhere else to improve a problem that they were having, but it doesn't necessarily improve my air quality here where I breathe. Additionally, because of the large amount of money, I'm really concerned that the agencies that regulate these industries cannot be objective in terms of monitoring and enforcing the rules. It's very difficult because of the money, the sheer amount of money that is entering into these decisions.
Thank you, Ms. Brill. That's about 30 seconds over the time limit, but thank you for your comments.
Thank you. And our next speaker is Jason Feifel. Jason Feifel, please unmute your phone by pressing *6.
Hi, my name is Jason Feifel, and I'm commenting on behalf of the Center for Biological Diversity. We stand with Kern County communities that have suffered from the effects of oil and gas pollution for far too long. We strongly urge you to reject this ordinance. We oppose this ordinance because it fast-tracks approvals for more than 40,000 new oil and gas wells over the next 20 years, while shutting out the public from future decisions about these dangerous projects. It will also result in serious damage to our health, air, water, wildlife, and climate. A recent Harvard study showed just how dangerous these projects can be to public health. The study estimated that air pollution from fossil fuels is responsible for more than 8 million premature deaths per year, far more than even COVID-19. 355,000 of those deaths happen in the United States in places like Kern County, where communities suffer from exposure to the fine particulate matter from oil and gas operations. Kern County has an opportunity to lead the transition away from fossil fuels and create a local economy that doesn't depend on this polluting industry. When I was growing up, my family moved to Bakersfield because my dad worked in the oil industry. I know what it's like for a family to depend on a job with an oil company. But it's time to stop propping up a dying industry and instead support workers as we transition away from oil and gas. Fossil fuel production is causing the climate emergency. Droughts, heat waves, and wildfires are getting worse and worse in California because of climate change. And Kern County has some of the dirtiest, most carbon-intensive oil on the planet. Trying to pump out more of this oil and gas is dangerous and short-sighted. Rather than finding ways to promote new oil and gas projects, the county should be prioritizing public health and creating clean, sustainable jobs that will help the county move away from oil and gas. We strongly urge you to reject this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Juan Flores. Juan Flores, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello, my name is Juan Flores, and I'm a resident of Delano here in Kern County. For decades in Kern County, low-income communities and communities of color have suffered from the disproportionate impact of environmental injustices, from poor quality to polluted water. When it comes to public health, our county is failing our communities as well. High numbers of cancer, diabetes, asthma, and other chronic diseases that are exacerbated by the poor choices that our county supervisors make, such as trying to pass this oil and gas ordinance without the necessary environmental and health analysis. With only one environmental impact report, you are trying to excuse tens of thousands of new oil wells. How can we know what are going to be the health impacts of a well next to housing or a school or a farm when no one is required to research that specific location? County supervisors, please stop hiding behind the discourse of tax revenues when you should be looking to examples outside of Kern County and realize that we do not have to depend on an industry that is naturally dying. The county should focus its attention on how to diversify our economy by inviting new, clean, and innovative industries that can provide clean jobs, and ultimately companies that can provide contract jobs under union representation. If we truly want to be energy independent, we must invest in green renewable energy. Listen to your communities and be the leaders that can take us to a better future, not the scapegoats of the executive directors of the oil industry. Please do not approve this ordinance. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Teresa Luque. Teresa Luque, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6, you may address the board.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Teresa Luque. I live in Irving, and I belong to the Committee for a Better Irving. I do not agree with the oil and gas ordinance. I also do not agree with the existing wells because it is proven the existence and manipulation of these wells affect our health and planet. Currently in Irving, we are living in a kind of toxic soup because the wind is no longer carrying pollen. The wind is literally carrying methane, a toxin from fossil fuels. The existence of these wells and their use affect
less privileged communities, agriculture, the climate, the ecology, and make us feel powerless of taking care of our planet because we are trying with disadvantage to create awareness to multinationals whose main interest is their personal goals instead of taking care about the common welfare. Kern, Arvin want to walk in the right direction. We want green energy. We have been affected by the coronavirus, and the existence of this will intensify the probability of new pandemic because it lowers our quality of life. Please, we need clean air and clean water to live. Arvin should be a valley where people come to heal, but it is the most polluted city of the nation. And this is for the intervention of the oil industry that is making our soil sick, filling it with perforation and poison. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Charis Franz. Charis Franz, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6.
My name is Charis Franz. I'm calling as a resident of Shafter. I am disappointed to see that again today, representatives of the oil and gas industry have been given priority in making comments. The conversations around these decisions are always lopsided. Approving this ordinance as it stands would be a short-sighted decision, a decision focused on the money in front of you rather than the long-term health and economic future of our county. We are rapidly moving towards a zero-carbon future. Governments and companies are setting aggressive climate goals. The market is moving towards renewable energy projects and research. And as the price of wind and solar power production drops and battery storage capacity increases, like the projects in Monterey Bay, the role of natural gas in the energy transition for California becomes even more uncertain. Our continued dependence on oil and gas revenue is a problem, and we need to have conversations about it. This ordinance should reflect a larger plan to transition away from fossil fuel energy, which it does not. Where is that plan? First the plan, then the ordinance. When I talk about an energy transition and the oil and gas companies talk about an energy transition, I want to know we're talking about the same thing. The ordinance also does not reflect what we know about the need for greater setback limits of 2,500 feet from schools, homes, etc., and the impact on ag, as Mr. Gardner articulated. Please do not make a short-sighted decision. We need a plan that truly represents all voices in the county and a combined effort to shape our energy future. Please vote to reject this ordinance and make a decision that will be good for the people of Kern County in 20, 30, 40 years. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just wanted to clarify for the record that the callers have been called on in the order that they signed up to speak. So just for the record. Our next caller is Colin O'Brien. Colin O'Brien, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman Peters and the Honorable Supervisors. My name is Colin O'Brien, and I work for Earth Justice. I'm calling to express solidarity with the frontline community members in Kern County who oppose this ordinance. Earth Justice, working with many of those community members, has submitted extensive written comments, and I just want to spend a minute talking about the much lauded air quality mitigation that some other speakers have mentioned. Essentially, you're being sold a false bill of goods when it comes to air quality mitigation. The county has been collecting fees and giving it to the Air District, but much of that money is actually spent outside of Kern County. And even less of that money goes to the frontline communities located closest to the oil and gas gas operations. Also, there's no accountability. The Air District doesn't really track with particularity the funds from Kern that it spends. It lumps it together with funds for other emissions reduction agreements associated with other projects. And on the county side, it hasn't been tracking the amount of pollution from the newly permitted wells. So when the SREIR promises no net increase in air pollution, that's a false promise because the county isn't tracking emissions and the Air District isn't tracking the emissions accomplished by its expenditures. I'll also note that in terms of setbacks, those are based on farcical modeling that doesn't acknowledge the well density that's actually common in Kern County. It also doesn't address emissions from operations of the oil and gas wells, and it failed to model the actual proximity of drilling to homes and schools that's allowed under the ordinance. The multi-well health risk assessment assessed risks at a distance of 100 feet, but this ordinance allows drilling
Thank you. The next speaker is Anna Albiar. Anna Albiar, if you would please unmute your phone by pressing *6.
Good morning, Chairman Peters, members of the board. My name is Anna Albiar. I'm the president-elect for the Bakersfield Association of Realtors. I'm speaking in support of approving the Kern County Oil and Gas Supplemental Recirculated EIR. The Bakersfield Association of Realtors is the county's largest trade association, representing over 2,300 members in Kern County. Realtors support good public policy, including land use policy that builds and maintains healthy and vibrant communities. All Californians depend on Kern County's oil and gas industry to provide the oil and natural gas that our state needs. The oil and gas industry in Kern County is responsible for 25,000 local jobs and millions of dollars in revenues to our local economy, and the SREIR ensures that we continue producing it under the strictest environmental health and safety standards in the world. Our community is healthier, happier, and a better place to live when we have access to abundant, affordable, local energy. Thank you so much for your support for our county's oil and gas industry.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mercedes Macias. Mercedes Macias, please unmute your phone by pressing *6.
My name is Mercedes Macias. I'm speaking on behalf of the Sierra Club. I'm as a longtime resident of Kern County. I am urging the board to reject this ordinance, as it is ludicrous to think that a singular environmental impact report can adequately determine the health impacts of oil and gas drilling. This environmental impact does nothing to protect the communities most vulnerable to those impacts. The science is clear. Drilling is not safe for people living, working, going to school nearby. Oil and gas extraction releases a toxic soup of chemicals like methane, benzene, and formaldehyde, and particulate pollution into the air and water. Numerous studies show a direct link between oil and gas production and a wide range of adverse health effects, from chronic asthma and cancers to the high-risk pregnancies and preterm births. We know, and numerous studies demonstrate, the disproportionate impacts of toxic oil pollution on marginalized communities, including Indigenous, Latina, Black, and Asian American households. We have a responsibility to protect the health of our families and our communities. People are sick and dying from the existing oil and gas drilling happening here in Kern County. The people of Kern County should not be sacrificed for profit. Oil executives would have you believe that the only way to see our community prosper is through continued dependence on the oil industry. That is not true. What is clear is that through continued dependence on the oil and gas industry, this will not be good to Kern County, as it is evident in the fact that Bakersfield consistently ranks among the most polluted, poorest, and least educated cities. We can do better. Our community deserves better, and how you vote today is a reflection of how you value your community. Again, I urge you to do what is right and reject this ordinance. Our communities are deserving of your vote to go against this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Elizabeth Perez. Elizabeth Perez, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, good morning. First and foremost, I want to point out that one EIR for thousands of wells does not make sense. There's no way to determine the impacts of these wells at the different locations. Today, I ask you that you oppose this ordinance for the children, for the elderly, and for those who are already suffering from health issues. Studies exist that show oil and gas production in communities lead to negative health impacts, such as increased risk of developing cancer and premature birth. It's time that we stop ignoring science. Many people in our county live within a mile of oil and gas wells, most of who are people of color and already being affected by social injustices. These residents have to deal with the impacts on a daily basis, including bloody noses, headaches, and nasty smells in the air. They constantly breathe in chemicals used in extraction. They constantly have to listen to drilling noise and drink contaminated water. Oil and gas drilling is a significant contributor to climate change. Oil and gas drilling leaks methane, known to be a climate change accelerator. As California faces historic wildfires and prolonged droughts, this expansion in fossil fuels would hurt our community and especially those whose health are in grave danger. This county needs to shift its focus to a just transition where a regenerative economy and an equitable distribution of resources exist. I agree, we must protect our workers, but at the expense of health of our residents. That's not okay. I strongly believe both can exist, but it doesn't start with the approval of this ordinance. For the communities who live in Kern County, who want a climate-safe future, and for all future generations, we call on the Board of Supervisors to abandon this proposed increase in local oil and gas extraction. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is John Conway. John Conway, please unmute your phone by pressing *6.
My name is Dr. Hello, my name is Dr. John Conway. I'm an environmental scientist and researcher at the Romero Institute, and I'm calling to urge you to vote against approving item 1 on today's agenda. Kern County produces 3/4 of all of the oil and gas extracted in California, meaning you 5 supervisors have a special and particular role in ensuring the state meets its climate goals. If you decide to move forward with this item, the 5 of you will be directly subverting our state's effort to combat the climate crisis, as well as perpetrating harm against the communities you were elected to serve, all while state, national, and global oil demand is dropping permanently. Not only that, but you will be undermining the future of Kern County's largest industry, agriculture, which employs nearly 15% of all Kern County workers, almost 4 times as many as are currently employed in oil and gas extraction. In other words, approving these revisions will permanently cripple your biggest, most important industry that prop up a declining industry that relies on harming your constituents to stay profitable. Climate change is already beginning to wreak havoc on California agriculture, and it will get worse if you approve these new wells. Water shortages, chaotic growing seasons, decreased yields, increased soil loss, more damaging storms, more pests, and more dangerous working conditions will all be consequences of a vote to approve the revisions before you today. Climate-related water shortages here alone have been estimated to cost up to $1,700 per acre every year. That would be, absent any other climate impacts, $4 billion lost for Kern County agriculture alone every single year. Compared to that, the $100 or $200 million in annual taxes Kern County collects from the oil and gas industry is a drop in the bucket. With annual wildfires ravaging the state and the jet stream nearing collapse, approving further extraction of the one thing most responsible for the climate crisis at the behest of a dying, predatory industry is irresponsible, immoral, and likely illegal. Please do not approve the revisions before you today. If you choose instead to vote yes, do so with full knowledge that it will be your children, your grandchildren, and their children who will pay the price. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Marta Elena Lopez. Marta Elena Lopez, please unmute your phone by pressing *6.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Marta López
y pertenezco al Comité para un Arvin Mejor. Y quiero expresar que no estoy de acuerdo en que pase la aseguranza del gas y petróleo. Es demasiado ya el daño que está causando la contaminación que tenemos en nuestro diario vivir. ¿Por qué hacer más pozos y seguir ignorando nuestros derechos? Necesitamos respirar aire puro, tomar agua limpia, pura. Nuestros niños y jóvenes tienen derecho a tener un futuro confiable y sano. Los adultos y personas de la tercera edad tenemos derecho también a tener una mejor calidad de vida. Si se tuviera conciencia de la salud y la vida de los residentes de nuestro valle, esta ordenanza ni siquiera estuviera en proceso de aceptación. Pido por favor que nuestros derechos, nuestras vidas estén por encima de cualquier beneficio económico que esta ordenanza pudiera significar. Muchas gracias por esta oportunidad.
Hi, yes, my name is Martha, and I am from the Better Committee of Arvin. I do not agree with this gas and oil well. It already has damage and has brought so much contamination. Why do we need more? Why do we need more oil wells? We deserve to breathe clean air, to drink good water. Older people deserve to live well, the residents. I can't even believe that this is even in process to become an ordinance. I ask you to think of our rights and our benefits. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Emma De La Rosa. Emma De La Rosa, please unmute your phone by pressing *6. Emma De La Rosa, please unmute your phone by pressing *6.
Good morning. My name is Emma De La Rosa. I am a policy advocate with Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability, and we work alongside community members most impacted by pollution, and the emissions from the oil and gas industry are of top concern for community members. This ordinance will loosen oversights by allowing self-certification for project compliance with the zoning ordinance and applicable mitigation measures during the construction and operation process for oil and gas conformity reviews and minor activity reviews. Self-certification completely disregards community members and employees at the construction and operation site and will lend to a risk of non-compliance with permits. Furthermore, this ordinance does not align and is a direct contradiction to Program 4.2 of the safety element to encourage extra precautions to be taken for the design of significant lifeline installations such as highways, utilities, and petrochemical pipelines. Furthermore, this ordinance will exacerbate air quality conditions in Kern County. The communities of Arvin and Lamont were recently selected for the CARB Community Air Protection Program. The approval of this ordinance without an adequate assessment of the impact to air quality will curtail the local air district's efforts to achieve and maintain compliance with state and federal air quality standards. Moreover, the Kern County General Plan does not comply with California's Government Code Section 565302.1 as it does not provide goals, policies, and objectives to improve air quality in the San Joaquin Valley as mandated by AB 170. Rather, the county should take the required steps to develop appropriate air quality guidelines in compliance with AB 170 to assess air quality impacts that will be produced with the implementation of this ordinance before considering approval. This ordinance change continues to prioritize oil extraction instead of much-needed housing sites in unincorporated Kern County. The Kern Planning Department currently faces a housing shortfall and is not in compliance with housing element law. Passing this ordinance will only exacerbate the housing shortage due to the ability to extract oil through a conditional use permit under Tier 4. Lastly, a ministerial permit review process does not provide for public engagement process and does not provide the county the ability to reject permit applications which could be dangerous for the public welfare. It is time that Kern County think outside the box rather than depending on a capricious industry for economic vitality. It is the county's obligation to engage in a just transition out of fossil fuels. It is the county's
Thank you. Our next speaker is Julie Solis. Julie Solis, please unmute your phone by pressing *6.
Good afternoon. My name is Julie Solis, JulieSolis. I'm calling today to ask you all to vote no for this ordinance. Our people need clean air, clean water. Right now, especially with this COVID going on, do you know how many thousands, hundreds, we are over 100,000 folks with lung issues. It is going to get worse. Kern County is dependent on the dying oil and gas industry. There's been a need to diversify our economy since oil started declining in the 80s. We must begin to transition to a new future for Kern County. Newsom has offered millions of dollars to help. We need to keep in mind the families depend on a stable income. We must ensure jobs will be secure, pay well, and are sustainable for our environment. We want to be a part of this solution. We want clean air. We want clean water to drink. We need a cleaner environment for all. Lung damage from asthma, valley fever, on top of, like I talked about earlier with COVID. What are we doing to these people's health? The vote you make today is a vote on our health. I'm asking you to please vote no on adding more poison into this air. Vote no on the ordinance that is killing our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Gabriela Ojeda. Gabriela Ojeda, please unmute your phone by pressing *6.
Buenos días. Buenos días, mi nombre es Gabriela Ojeda. ¿Me pueden escuchar?
Sí, señora.
Ok. Buenos días, mi nombre es Gabriela Ojeda, soy residente de la ciudad de Arvin y pertenezco al Comité para un Arvin Mejor. Hablo en nombre de mi familia y yo que somos directamente afectados por las emisiones que hay en el medio ambiente. Mis niños no pueden salir a jugar al aire libre porque el aire está muy contaminado. Yo vivo enfrente de una escuela y tampoco hay días que los niños de la escuela pueden salir a jugar. No es justo que se tengan que quedar en su área, en su tiempo libre, encerrados en la cafetería o en los salones, porque el aire está muy contaminado. Unos años atrás también hubo un incidente con unas pipas subterráneas que se rompieron y afectaron a 8 familias. En donde descubrieron el incidente, estaba saliendo el gas por el closet de la casa. Lo descubrió una señora que estaba embarazada, que vivía en esa casa. Y hasta este momento no les han resuelto ese problema, que quedaron afectados. Las familias fueron 8 familias afectadas. Y es por eso que no estoy de acuerdo que pase esa ordenanza. Muchas gracias.
Hi, yes, my name is Gabriela Ojeda. I am a resident of Arvin. I am part of a committee, Better Arvin, and I am calling on behalf of my family. Not only it affects me with all of the emissions, but it also affects my children. They cannot play outside. The air is so contaminated. I live in front of a school, and there are days that kids cannot play outside, and I don't think it's fair that on their free time, they have to remain inside or in a cafeteria because the air is so contaminated. A while back, 8 families were affected because the soil was contaminated. A pregnant lady found out that there was gas being released from her closet. This problem has been yet to be resolved. 8 families were affected, so I do not agree with this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sarah Nelson. Sarah Nelson, please unmute your phone by pressing *6.
Good morning.
Hello. Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity to speak with you. I'm the Executive Director of the Romero Institute, a human rights law, policy, and organizing organization named after Saint Archbishop Oscar Romero. In June 2015, Pope Francis issued his encyclical on climate change. A scientist himself, he said definitively that global warming is human-caused and driven by the fossil fuel industry. He said that the impact of the industry is catastrophic for the living systems of our common home, planet Earth. It is a moral imperative that we stop global warming, or there will be no future for our children and grandchildren. We oppose this SIEIR because we need a just transition to renewable energy solutions that already exist. There are millions of new jobs needed to make this transition. This is where our taxes and resources should be invested. The industry has been lying to us for decades. They created climate denial with a PR firm. They are protecting their profits and power while killing 14,000 people annually in California who die prematurely and unnecessarily from the toxins produced by their industry. This just came out in a UCLA report recently. Kern County is the killing fields of California, the fifth largest economy in the world, and we should be leading the world in a transition to renewable energy. When our elected leaders and citizens are seduced by the money and power of a lethal industry, we are all soaked in the blood and suffering of the hundreds of thousands of people now in the world who are dying, starving, fleeing droughts and floods, running and migrating for their lives. They did not cause global warming, but they are paying the price. As humans, we must care for life and life systems and creation. We did not create Earth, our common home. This magnificent home provides all we need for life, unless we vote for policies that contaminate and destroy the water, the land, the air. Please vote no. Instead, vote for a clean and renewable future.
Thank you. The next speaker is Daniel Sheehan. Daniel Sheehan. Please unmute your phone by pressing *6.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman Peters and members of the board. My name is Daniel Sheehan. I am the former chief counsel for the United States Jesuit Order in the National Office of Social Ministry in Washington, D.C., and the former founder of the Harvard Civil Rights Law Review. I am calling to oppose the adoption of this SREI. I also was co-counsel in the major case to stop the Dakota Access Pipeline because of the same damage to the local communities that this is causing. This ordinance that you're putting in and about to put in, because I know that you're not listening to us, you're getting ready to put this in at the behest of the oil corporations, just like the people in North Dakota were cajoled into doing. Now their water is being contaminated, their children are dying, and they now regret what it is that has been going on. You're in the process of doing this again. That you are caught in this slavery, basically, to the oil corporations and the taxes you are getting from this. This is contrary to all of the principles that have been set forth by Pope Francis in his encyclical on protecting our common home. It's contrary to the most basic Judeo-Christian social ethics that you're aware of, and you're caught in this, just like the people that were caught with the cotton industry in supporting slavery. You're doing this, you know this, for the profits that you think you're getting, but you're killing your people, you're poisoning your land, you're poisoning your water. This is a moral demand that you have to vote against this. You think you need to vote for it because of all the hours put in at the behest of the oil corporations to try to comply as tightly as you can get away with a court order. You're going to be sued again. You're going to be sued again. You're going to lose again. And each of you is going to be systematically removed from office if you vote for this ordinance. That's what's getting ready to happen. Thank you for your time. I know you're not listening because
Thank you. The next speaker is Jose Garola. Jose Garola, please unmute your phone by pressing *6, and we are listening.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, my name is Jose Gurola. I'm a former council member, mayor, and lifelong resident of Arvin. For the brief time that we have, allow me to skip all the pleasantries and get straight to the point why I oppose the the certification of the SREIR and the accompanying documents. First, we have a couple years of the previous ordinance already underway to look at what exactly happened. 97% of the permits were allowed where people of color and low-income communities live. This is directly impacting the communities that suffer the most environmental burdens. Second, 1,300 wells approximately were constructed or were allowed to be drilled within 2,500 feet. The science is clear that the 2,500-foot setback is necessary to be health protectant of the community. In Arden, we adopted a 300 and a 600-foot setback, and I'm glad to see that there's some improvement in this ordinance, but it's not enough. We would have gone further, but we would have been subject to lawsuits, and we did not have the legal department and the resources that the County of Kern has to fight that. We believe we would have been successful, but again, we didn't have the resources. Third, the air quality mitigation. Several speakers have already said that the air quality mitigation efforts, although it's good in sense and application, it doesn't do the job. 3 simple solutions that this board can adopt to improve this ordinance, because I don't believe you're going to outright reject it, is number 1, adopt a 2,500-foot setback. Number 2, pass an extraction tax to fund an environmental justice fund to help support the negative impacts of these communities of color and low-income communities. And third, increase the air quality mitigation measures and track it, making sure that they go back to the communities, like funding the Shafter and Arvin and Lamont AB 617 programs. Lastly, the fact that this board has historically put so much of their eggs in the oil basket that revenue-starved schools, law enforcement agencies, cities, public agencies, higher education.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Brian Holt. Brian Holt, please unmute your phone by pressing *6.
Hello, my name is Brian Holt, BrianHolt, and I'm calling on behalf of the Kern County Electrical Joint Apprenticeship and Training Trust in strong support of the board's approval of the recirculated EIR and the countless training opportunities it would provide for the young workers of Kern County. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is John Cardwell. John Cardwell, please unmute your phone by pressing *6.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Cardwell, JOHN CARDWELL, and I represent the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 428 here in Kern County, and I am calling in support of the oil and gas EIR. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Juan Campos. Juan Campos, please unmute your phone by pressing *6.
Good morning. My name is Juan Campos, Community Outreach Director for the League of United Latin American Citizens, LULAC Council 3272. LULAC is the oldest Latino civil rights organization in the United States. We are the largest LULAC council in California with over 90 members. I myself am a first-generation immigrant growing up in the small western town of Buttonwillow, rural farm and oil and gas industry all around us. Local oil and gas producers provide safe, good-paying careers and fund better roads, local schools, and essential public services like law enforcement and fire protection. A permitting structure that provides certainty to producers also provides certainty to us consumers as we will continue to have reliable and affordable energy, something that we cannot rely or depend on for external imports, as a lot of that is out of our control, including the environmental regulations that we follow here in California. We ask that our local leaders apply predictable regulations and policies that ensure the energy we still need is made here in California and not imported. We feel very fortunate to have a thriving oil and gas industry in our area. The industry provides opportunity from which all of our members directly or indirectly benefit from, both from high quality jobs and significant participation and volunteerism in our community. Without their support, our council will find it very difficult to successfully pursue our mission. A major part of our success is due to consistent support given by the local oil and gas producers and their workers. Our council will not be able to continue sponsoring community events such as our citizenship workshops, student mentoring workshops, and scholarship fundraising without the help of our local oil and gas industry. We strongly urge the board to support the SREIR and continue to allow Kern County to shine as an energy leader. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Maria Martinez. Maria Martinez, please unmute your phone by pressing *6.
Hola.
Hola, señora.
Buenas tardes. Mi nombre es María Martínez. Primeramente quiero darle las gracias a todos los que están reunidos para hablar acerca de estos pozos aceiteros que se siguen haciendo mucho daño a la tierra. Quiero ser muy breve y quiero decir que pues para la industria del aceite pues obviamente es su manera de vivir y pues ellos van a ver su beneficio, pero los daños colaterales que ellos están causando son muchos y pues no podemos bajar la cortina y simplemente cerrar los ojos a los daños que se están haciendo. Hay muchas personas con asma, muchos niños que no pueden salir a jugar, muchos cáncer de mama. Nosotros vivimos a 200 pies de una refinería y eso ha sido una gran cosa que siempre nos ha dañado. Hay mucha gente con alergia y como le comento, muchos daños. Entonces sabemos que el dióxido de carbono es uno de los componentes y el metano del gas. Entonces estos obviamente flotan en el aire y causan mucho daño a la tierra. Entonces yo estoy en contra de que sigan haciendo pozos petroleros porque eso va a causar más daño a la tierra que ya de por sí no puede. Vemos lo que ha pasado, ahí está la tormenta en Texas de esta nevada, cuántos daños no causó y esto es por el calentamiento de la tierra, por los daños que se le están causando. Y pues todas estas personas, aunque estén en la industria del aceite y ahorita tengan dinero, y estén bien, hay que pensar que ellos tienen hijos, tienen nietos, que ¿qué les van a heredar? Una tierra que no va a servir para nada, una tierra completamente dañada. Entonces eso es lo que tenemos que tener presente, pensar no en lo material, porque lo material lo tenemos hoy y mañana se va. El COVID, ¿cuántas industrias tumbó en un ratito? Y industrias grandes que se fueron del mercado porque ya no podían. Entonces vemos que tenemos que hacer algo y no simplemente bajar la cortina y hacernos los sordos o los ciegos. Muchísimas gracias y muy amables.
Hi, yes, my name is Maria Martinez. First of all, thank you, and to all that are gathering for this hearing. I'm going to be brief, and I'm going to talk about the damage what this oil industry has caused. I know the individuals that work for the oil industry are, living well. They have benefits, but it's causing damages, and we cannot sweep this under the rug. It's causing asthma. Kids can't play outside. It's causing breast cancer. It's harmful. The methane, the carbon, look everything that happened in Texas, with the global warming. These individuals that work for the oil industry, they're not thinking about their kids or their grandkids or how harmful it's going to be. They need to stop thinking material. Look what happened with COVID, how it wiped out so many businesses. We have to do something. We can't just, pretend that we don't hear or that we don't see. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Chelsea 2. Chelsea 2, Please unmute your phone by pressing star 6.
Good morning, Chairman and honorable supervisors. My name is Chelsea Tu, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Center on Race, Poverty, and the Environment in opposition to this ordinance. I would like to focus on the conflicting time duration on this ordinance and its accompanying supplemental revised EIR. Although staff has discussed this ordinance around the 15-year or 2035 time span, this representation is directly contradicted by the staff report that also states that there is no expiration date for this ordinance. In other words, as it is currently drafted, this ordinance can be in effect indefinitely. What is equally troubling is that the staff report also claims that the SREIR can be used to implement this ordinance as long as the ordinance is in effect, even though the SREIR only discloses environmental impacts from oil and gas drilling under this ordinance for over the next 15 to 20 years or so. To be clear, allowing almost 2,700 new oil and gas wells to be drilled every single year will bring significant environmental and health harms to Kern communities regardless of timeline, especially given the existing 78,000 oil and gas wells that are already polluting Kern County. Ultimately, yet, the public is still left wondering, how long will this ordinance and the SREIR last? 15, 20, 25 years? Or as the staff report also admits, in perpetuity? As the decision makers of this county, you have the legal responsibility to ensure that the scope of what you're being asked to vote on is clear and accurate. Unfortunately, the county's answers to the fundamental question on the duration of this ordinance and the SREIR are not only confusing, but also contradictory. We urge that you reject this conflicting.
Thank you. The next speaker is Dolores Huerta, and I received confirmation that she is having Lori Pasante speak on behalf of the foundation. So Lori Pasante, go ahead and unmute your phone by pressing star 6. You have 2 minutes.
Good morning, Chairman of the Board, Supervisors. My name is Lori Pasante, and I am the Director of Civic Engagement and Government Relations at the Dolores Huerta Foundation. Dolores had scheduling conflicts after 11 a.m. today, and so she asked me to read the following comment on her behalf. Without the establishment of a clear plan for just transition benefiting Kern County's working families, we at the Dolores Huerta Foundation must oppose the passage of this ordinance. We recommend that the Board of Supervisors establish a task force and bring in experts to make a plan to transition from fossil fuels to alternative energy. While we know that Kern County is #1 in oil production, it is also #1 in green alternative energy. To issue permits for fast-tracking oil and gas exploration without a plan is backwards thinking. We are the leaders in the above-mentioned categories, and we can be the leaders in how to transition, ensuring that all the thousands of workers who work in the oil industry have meaningful, productive, and well-paying jobs. Job training will be an essential component of this plan. This plan should include how people can continue to have strong job opportunities. Continued strong employment must be secured for all of Kern County's working families. Kern County's economic future must be secured. At the same time, we must take the threat of climate change seriously, not just for Kern County, but for California and the world. Kern County's working families must have a clear plan that protects their future. I thank you for your time today.
Thank you. The next speaker is Paloma Pavel. Paloma Pavel, please unmute your phone by pressing star 6.
Hello, this is Dr. Paloma Pavel.
Am I heard?
Yes, you are.
Thank you. Yes, I'm president of Earth House Center and a member of the Regional Advisory Council at the University of California at Davis, where we have extensive projects working with community groups, as well as research and study in the area of the Central Valley and also Kern County. And it's my both privilege and responsibility to be speaking out today to ask you to not approve this ordinance. We've been hearing from the very well-financed oil and gas industry this morning in this presentation, and they represent a dying industry, an industry that is sunsetting, an industry that's flailing, an industry that has a short lifespan ahead of it. And Kern County has an opportunity today to actually vote for a different kind of future. You have the possibility, instead of taking the community hostage and permanently damaging your real wealth, the air, the water, the soil, and the agricultural industry, which is a renewable, regenerative source of jobs, you have the opportunity, instead of voting to permanently damage, not just in the short term, but we've been hearing how the monitoring has not been successful. The accidents which occur on a regular basis, it's an industry that has been chosen to be placed in 97.9% low-income areas and communities of color. Why is that? The people who were testifying this morning as executives, they aren't voting to put this in their backyards. They're voting to create sacrifice zones where the community's health, their future, their genetic reproductivity is being impacted.
Thank you. The next speaker is Michael Turnipseed. Mr. Turnipseed, please unmute your phone by pressing *6. Mr. Turnipseed, are you there?
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. This is Michael Turnipseed representing the Kern County Taxpayers Association. I've listened intently the last 2 hours while many of your callers are coming in challenging a basic way of life in Kern County. But most of them only talk about one side of the story. They talk about the future of renewable energies. We've been doing that for the last 2 decades. And I guess none of the people called in today knows that 50% of all the renewable energy in the state of California is produced in Kern County. And another thing, people only have oil fields where oil exists. If there's no oil, you don't see people drilling for oil. And it's so bad that when our commitment to solar especially, it's my understanding that we have 36,000 acres of solar, and there's another 27,000 in the planning process acres of solar, with more looking beyond that. So we're looking at doubling our solar production in the next 10 years, while 8 counties, other solar counties, are not even permitting solar anymore because the industry doesn't play fair. They don't have property taxes. So because of California removing the fact that they have to pay property tax, they're putting all that money in their billionaire pockets. And we're here today to help manage a declining industry, pay the bills until California public policy treats Kern County and other oil-producing counties fairly with revenues from the renewable energies that we don't get down. And so we support this bridge, this EIR, to take us down the road And hopefully, we hope the state of California will step up and do their job and require the solar energy to pay property tax to help provide the services that we are now missing out of because of the declining oil industry. So we hope this is a good step to help oil finish its lifeful use, and while we continue to support the.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Carl Anthony. Mr. Anthony, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6.
Hello. Hello.
Mr. Anthony, we can hear you.
Hello. Carl Anthony was called to a doctor's appointment and asked me to represent his remarks.
And your name?
Are you there?
Yes.
I am Pavel, and I'm co-founder with Carl of the Breakthrough Communities Project. And Mr. Anthony is also the author of a book called The Earth, the City, and the Hidden Narrative of Race. And he has studied extensively for more than 40 years, and during his time at the Ford Foundation, where he directed the largest community development project in the world, the impacts of environmental injustice on communities of color. And what he wanted to say, and has provided his remarks, is that this ordinance calls for sacrifice zones. 97% of these oil and gas wells are distributed in communities of color. This has been true of this industry from the beginning. And the monitoring, the dismantling of them is not provided for. The ways in which the economics are calculated, they look at the externalizing of the burdens on communities of color, the discounting of those figures, while calculating the benefits to the industries themselves. So this isn't really correct economics that are being used to justify this. And what we're turning away from is the real wealth, the air, the water, the soil, the people themselves who stand to reinvent and reimagine a new future for Kern County, which is a life-sustaining future. That is possible, and today is a benchmark day. It's a watershed day for making an investment in a renewable, a regenerative, and a life-sustaining future for Kern County. Say no to being taken hostage on.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to read, I believe it's 3 names of people who signed up, but I want to make sure that they aren't still waiting on the line. Amy Roth, Rick Schoengert, Jamie Brasenio, I'm sorry, a couple more names, Joanne Engel, Holland Kreitzman. If any of those people are on the line, we can hear from you now. Mr. Chairman, none of those numbers were in the queue in Teams, so I'm pretty certain that we have concluded public comment from live callers.
Great. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Well, with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn to closed session to consider County Administrative Office item number 2.
Second. Wait, announce when we're coming back.
Okay, yes, thank you. And we will be coming back at 2 o'clock. Thank you. Okay, without objection, we are adjourned.